All right. We are
Hi,
live.
Jim.
Hi. Give it a couple
Hi.
minutes for people to come on. Let's see here. I've already got people asking no podcast. Uh,
Oh, really? Well,
sorry. Yeah. So yeah, we're sorry we're a little late tonight. Son had a baseball game and a couple technical problems that pop up. I think I'm not sure if Scarlett's joining us or not. I thought she was, but then I think she's at some kind of a meeting. She texted us a little while ago. I think so. She might be at a meeting tonight. So maybe she'll pop in. So tonight, Jessica, we got a couple great stories. I think we should lead it off with the CNN town hall last night with President Donald Trump. I'd like to discuss that. I think we should review the actual clips from last night. We did find a video of the entire town hall meeting, and so I think we should go through some of it. And because I mean, my impressions were after I watched it were surprise, significantly different than what the media is reporting. And so, yeah, I know you watched it today. What was your take?
yeah, so I agree with you, Jim. I missed it. I don't watch CNN typically. I don't like CNN. I don't watch cable news, period, usually. But so my first impressions of it were from reading news articles. And of course, when you Google things, you get corporate media, you get mainstream media articles. And they made it sound like it was an unmitigated disaster for Trump. Like I'm not surprised, they always do this, but they made it sound like, a complete horror show. They said things like Trump called January 6th a beautiful day, making it sound like he was saying that about, the people that went in the Capitol and assaulted officers. They made it sound like he was pro Vladimir Putin, that he wouldn't, take a stance on Ukraine, like on and on and on. He's bullying a sexual assault accuser, on and on and on. And so I thought, wow, what was this? Was this a horror show? But I have done this long enough that I know that what you often read in the media, it's very different if you watch it yourself. And so today I watched the CNN town hall. I found it on YouTube and I watched it myself. And I have to tell you, Jim, that it's just a much more mixed bag than they presented. I don't think it was a horror show for Trump. In fact, in some instances, I thought he did really well. There were some questions I thought he knocked out of the park. There were other things he said that were perhaps factually stretching it, or unwise, in my opinion. It was classic Trump, but I actually thought it was really, really different from the version you got in the media.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it does make me wonder what CNN was thinking by bringing him on live, live no less, and then doing it in front of a pro-Trump Republican crowd. It surprises me that CNN would have pulled that off. And I know they're getting a lot of criticism today. I think even internally, there are a lot of people questioning the move. Chairman Chris Licht came out today in defense of his decision to do it. Saying, "Well, this is the real Donald Trump." But yeah, what are your thoughts on why CNN decided to do it?
Yeah, I thought about that a lot today because it was very unusual. This from a network that has been very, very anti-Trump, I believe. And so what they did is they put him on this sort of freewheeling town hall format. And you're right, like the questioners were pro-Trump people. Like they were people who had voted for Trump. They were young Republicans. They were people like that. And so he got questions from a friendly audience. And you could tell that as well because he would get applause, which is not something I've seen in many, mainstream media town hall formats or debate formats. Do you remember, Jim, in I think it was the gubernatorial debate, or was it the Senate debate in the fall, where they had such a, liberal audience packed in there in Wisconsin that I forgot if it was Michaels or Johnson, but one of them was getting booed, and there was just really, ridiculous behavior in the audience. This was the opposite. I mean, people were applauding Trump. So I did sit back and go, wow. I mean, what is CNN doing here? Now, of course, they had this journalist, Caitlin Collins, who was, I mean, at times I thought she asked tough questions, but a lot of the time she seemed like she was just outright hostile toward Trump, badgering Trump, obnoxiously following up everything Trump said with her own editorial comments. And so they did sort of counterbalance it with that. But what I was thinking as to why they did this, obviously CNN's ratings are absolutely in the toilet. That's one reason they got rid of Don Lemon. And obviously, we all saw what happened on Fox News with Tucker Carlson, and that's enraged conservatives to the point of not wanting to watch Fox. So I'm wondering if this new CNN guy, well, he's not that new, but this licked guy is thinking, oh, maybe I can lure some conservatives back to CNN, maybe mix it up a little bit, like show them, we're not completely biased, because there's this huge audience, this huge cable audience right now wandering around without a home because they're not going to go back to Fox. I guess that's what I think, but it is weird. I guess they give them points for having the town hall.
Yeah, definitely. It was a risky move, and I think this morning the CNN executives were probably regretting doing it. I thought overall, and we should maybe play. By the way, Stephanie, I sent you a message, or Ed, if either of you two want to join us for this discussion, feel free. I know Ed's going through a little bit of a tough time. If he wants to talk about that, that's fine. But if either of you guys want to come on, I'd like to get your input on this also. I think we're expecting Scarlett. Hopefully she'll come on in a little bit. But
yeah,
anyway.
Come on. You're welcome. If you want to pop on, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, someone in the comment thread said, they're probably trying to catch them in false information. I mean, I think Caitlin Collins was clearly trying to create a narrative with the way she was driving her questions. At the same time, they kind of gave him free rein to, I guess, say his piece. And I find that unusual, and I find it refreshing, because let's not forget, this is a president who was censored off social media, right? I know at the tail end of the last presidential election, they were cutting out of his rallies. They weren't running full rallies and things like that. So they're definitely mixing it up a little bit. And there were parts of this I thought where Trump did really, really well. I mean, you're not going to hear that in the media. I thought his abortion question was fantastic, or his answer on abortion was really, really solid. I thought, actually, contrary to the media, his answer on Ukraine was really, honestly, pretty solid. Guns, very solid. Did you think he did well, Jim?
I think he did pretty well. I thought there were a couple responses. By the way, Stephanie, I just sent you a link. There were a couple responses on Facebook Messenger that I thought he was weak in. I don't think he did a good job explaining his confidential the documents that were found in his home. I thought that was a weak answer. But I'm trying to review what else I thought here was weak. I thought his answer on abortion was solid. They were definitely trying to get him, obviously, to take a stance on doing a federal ban on abortion, because we know that would have just been a dagger. I don't think there's any question on that, especially after what we've seen happen here in Wisconsin.
What frustrated me is this. Trump was at his strongest when this questioner, Caitlin Collins, got out of his way and stopped, trying to create a narrative on January 6th. And like you said, the federal ban on abortion. She was clearly trying to do it with the documents, with, obviously the election is rigged kind of stuff. Trump was strongest when he focuses on Biden's failures, when he talks about the border, when he talked about inflation. Like I said, when he focuses on issues and policies, the Second Amendment, and, as well, abortion and even the Ukraine war. When he goes off the tracks, to me, is when he takes their bait and goes down this election is rigged and January 6th rabbit hole and just doesn't pivot out of it for so long. Like, they're trying to take him there because they know that that is not popular with moderates, with independents needed to win elections. It plays to the hardcore base and not all of them. So I really wished when Caitlin Collins was trying to repeatedly bait Trump, for example, on the election, if he would have just stopped and just pivoted and said, you know what? We're going to talk about 2023 and what's happening now. And we're going to talk about the failures of Joe Biden. And I want you to contrast your life right now with how it was when I was president. I want you to think about how much you pay at the grocery store. I want you to think about how much it costs you to put gas in your car. Caitlin, that's what we're going to talk about tonight. And every time she tried to pivot back to, the election, do you think the election's stolen? Well, are you saying false statements about that? Oh, don't you really think you lost? He should have said that. Every time they brought up January 6th, he should have said that. Unfortunately, he didn't. Like, he tumbles right down the rabbit hole with them. And so those were the pieces where I didn't really like it, because I don't want this election in 2024 to be a relitigation of January 6th and the election, 2020 election. I think that is not the winning narrative for Republicans.
No, you're right, and I agree with you. I think, it seemed like it was the first quarter, third, where she kept on trying to bring back January 6th and the election, because she knows that Trump is going to continue to go on and on about that, take the bait, and then they're just looking for a good sound clip to be able to use him. And I think that's what this whole thing was. They were trying to play gotcha games, looking for the sound clip. You notice how as they would begin to move on or end the topic, she would try to do a summary, and she would do her own summarization on what Trump just said, trying to create a narrative. I caught her doing that several times, and I think we'll kind of point those out.
That was really obnoxious at a certain point. And, I'm a journalist. I teach journalism. And obviously, I talk to my students about the art of the follow-up question. And if a politician's obfuscating or whatever, I think you do have a responsibility as a journalist to ask, follow-up questions. And so there were times, I'm not going to say like every follow-up question she asked was inappropriate. It wasn't. There were times he was being a little, dodgy or not answering the question. But there were other times I thought she pushed it too far, and it became frankly obnoxious. And she's a journalist, and she would thread in sort of her editorial opinion. What did what did she say at one point, Jim, about wrapping it up or buttoning it down?
Yeah, I don't know if I have that written down in my notes here, but she said, okay, well, to button this down, and then she gave a statement like, no, that's not right. What he just said.
Right. And at one point, I caught her actually stating a factually false, fact. Well, it's not a fact if it's false. I guess it's an oxymoron. And I want to cut a clip of that out and send it viral and maybe do a story on it, because she outright stated that there were no illegal votes in the state of Wisconsin. In retort, one of these editorializing retorts to Trump. Well, that's false. Ask Eric Toney, the district attorney of Fond du Lac County, who ran for attorney general. Eric Toney has convicted people of illegal votes. So
no,
there are. I'm not saying there's a mass amount of them, but it was a false editorial comment.
But on the flip side, I think this is where Trump failed really bad, is when he claimed that Milwaukee had so many fraudulent votes they didn't know what to do with them, something to that effect. I remember going, wait a minute, yeah. I don't recall that happening at all.
Well, there's always this perception, Milwaukee pulled all these ballots out of its hat because, we have these ballot dumps late at night. But, honestly, it's just because of how they organize their elections. I'm not saying the 2020 election was perfect. I think there were issues with special voting deputies. There were issues with WEC. There were issues with WEC kicking third parties off the ballot. all of this, those are legitimate questions. And like I said, Eric Toney did prosecute and managed to convict some people of voter fraud in that election. That being said, it's not this, I'm sorry, it's not a winning narrative for conservatives. And I agree with you, Jim. There is no evidence of rampant illegal voting in Milwaukee. I mean, it hasn't been produced. If you can't prove it, don't say it. But I don't even want to relitigate it here. The point is, it's not a winning narrative for Trump. There is so much to work with when it comes to Biden's failures. And we're seeing that today at the border with Title 42 about to expire at midnight. Talk about that. Stop following the liberal media down these rabbit holes.
Yeah, because the liberals don't want to talk about that. They don't want to talk about Biden's failures. They want to keep bringing back January 6th. I want to welcome Stephanie Susek. She's the chairman of the Door County Republicans. She's doing a great job up there. Stephanie, thank you for joining us. We've wanted to have you on for quite a while.
Sure. Well, thanks for asking me to be on. So actually, it's funny. Today I was on the phone for about a half hour with a reporter from the Washington Post because regarding elections, they said that they were trying to find a county in the whole country that since 2000, since the year 2000, has always chosen the president. And so apparently we're one of the rare few counties in the country, this is what she told me, that has always chosen the person that ended up becoming president, or we voted for the person. So for George W. Bush all the way through to Biden, we apparently reflected what the country chose. So she was asking me, speaking of what's important to people, she was asking what are concerns for me personally, and then in our own county. And I didn't even think of, the things that the liberals want to bring up. I was thinking about inflation and the border and, our foreign policy and, a lot of those things that are just the kitchen table issues and things that are directly affecting a lot of people. So that's not to say, I do have concerns, with election integrity, just making sure that laws are followed and they don't try to pull a lot of the same stuff from 2020, which it was kind of the perfect storm with COVID. I think they really used COVID as an excuse to loosen some election laws, or they really pushed mail-in voting, obviously. So, but I think we learned a lot from that. And I know there are some things that, as a party, state party and county parties, we've really worked hard at trying to ensure people's votes are, counting, and that we have election observers and election workers everywhere we can get them. I'm actually chief inspector on election day at my polling place, so I know a lot about the process, just being involved that way. So I think you're right that we do need to really focus on those issues that are affecting people directly. And, I don't mind bringing up certain things that we need to, we want to ensure people that their votes count, but also we don't need to get pulled into that whole 2020 thing again.
Stephanie, not over and over and over again. Yeah.
Right.
Like I'd be fine with a, yeah.
Yeah. We need to move on. And believe me, I was frustrated with a lot of the things that happened in 2020. I wanted to address and fix some of those things. Well, all of them if possible, but I've wanted to make sure that we address those issues, but also we just can't keep going back to that and rehashing it over and over. So I agree.
Stephanie, I thought it was interesting when you brought up Door County selecting the presidents. How far back did that go? You mentioned George W. Does that go all the way back, or how far back?
2000. So 2000, she said. So it's been 20 years, I guess, because they counted in 2020. So
the other interesting thing was in the November race, I believe Door County was the only county that picked Ron Johnson and Tony Evers. They split the ticket. I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah. And what's funny is the night of the election, I remember in November, I was with my assemblyman, Joel Kitchens. We were at like a watch party, and we were trying to keep up with the results coming in. And he said that his son had just sent him something saying Ron Johnson had won Door County. And that was going to bode well, hopefully, for Ron Johnson statewide, because in the past, at least the past several years, we have how we vote in our county is indicative of the way the state will go for that candidate. So when I found out Ron Johnson won our county, I was like, oh, dear God, like, thank you. I hope that's, bodes well for him, because I was, I mean, and he barely won. I mean, it was close in Door County, but we're such an interesting county that way, where we can swing both ways, and we can even split the ticket. I mean, and we voted for John Leiber as well, so he won in our county. But then the other three, statewide candidates didn't win in our county. So
does your county want DeSantis or Trump?
It's interesting because there's definitely still some strong Trump support. But however, I have heard from different members and different people that they kind of they're drawn more towards DeSantis because they think he's done a really good job in Florida, and he's a fighter, but he's also he might be more appealing to certain people in the middle, and they like him, just genuinely like him, I think. So I have heard that some people kind of want to move forward with DeSantis. I don't know the percentage. I am going to be having our Lincoln Day dinner coming up, so maybe I should do a straw poll.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. That could make national news, actually.
So Stephanie, I've got a little place up in Door County. I spend quite a bit of time up there fishing.
Oh,
and I know I know that there's a lot of Illinois plates up there. Obviously, it's a big vacation area, touristy area for Illinois people. And so I wonder sometimes how many of those people end up retiring and moving up to Door County. So I'm wondering, have you noticed any a shift in the county's politics based on, do you have an influx of Illinois people moving up there and then voting Democrats? Have you guys seen that happen?
I mean, I don't know the numbers particularly, like I don't have proof of it necessarily, but I do know that just generally speaking, there are people who come up from the southern part of Wisconsin or Illinois to retire in our communities. And so, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that has affected things. I think, again, we do go back and forth. The interesting thing is Andre Jacques, who's pretty conservative as a state senator. He's even, I don't think he's controversial, but some people would say that he won in our county. It's just so interesting, but then Evers won. So I can't quite figure all that out unless people are just not informed when they're voting. But so again, it's a mix, but I certainly up north is ultra, like very liberal. Sister Bay is very liberal, for example. So depending on which part of the county you're in, I remember in 2020 there was like Black Lives Matter activists were up in Sister Bay, and they have, there's a pretty far left wing of the Democrat Party in our county. So, I've heard people refer to Door County as Madison North. So, wow. Again, we're definitely not like overall as liberal as Madison, but there are elements of those type of liberals in our county, I think.
So Robert Kolb said, I have good friends who support Trump, good friends support DeSantis. I'm not going to make this a fight. I do think Trump is more likely to eliminate all of the 3-letter agencies. He said that in the comment thread. And Michael Albrecht asked, has DeSantis even announced he's running officially? The answer is no, he hasn't announced that. Jim and I saw him speak in Wausau last week, and it was a campaign speech. Like, I will frankly die of shock if DeSantis doesn't run. We were told he's waiting for the Florida budget, and maybe in about a week you might see a DeSantis announcement. Going back to Robert's point, though, like, I really hope that conservatives just respect each other. If someone likes DeSantis in the primary, you know what, good for them. I think that's a reasonable option. If someone is just wedded to Trump, they're loyal to Trump, I think we don't insult that person either. Like, I don't want this to be a repeat of, the gubernatorial primary in Wisconsin, where conservatives, some of them, small number, but some of them became extraordinarily vicious toward each other. And no one respected the fact that people do have a right in this country to just support different candidates on the Republican side. So, right. I hope that happens. I wanted to make a quick point about the January 6th narrative that was thrust into this town hall. When I read the news stories about this town hall, and they said this line that Trump had said, where he said, January 6th was a beautiful day. And I thought they excerpted it very dishonestly. They tried to make it sound like he was saying it was a beautiful day that, cops were being beat up or something. But when we, actually, when I actually watched the town hall today on YouTube, I realized that he made that comment in much broader context about January 6th, and that part of it, he was really referring to the rally before everything went awry.
Sure.
And it's really bothered me for a long time that the media, some of them, lump everyone who was there that day into this general category of insurrectionists. And that's just wildly unfair. Like, the people who were at the earlier rally, who didn't go to the Capitol, didn't beat up cops, didn't enter the Capitol building, didn't even go to the Capitol grounds, I think there is no reason to say they're not good people. And I think when Trump was saying it was a beautiful day, he was saying it started out a beautiful day. He was saying, like, the rally was well attended and it was this beautiful day outside. And then it kind of went awry.
Well, and it's kind of like the Charlottesville comment about there's very fine people on both sides. He was talking, I mean, there's like video evidence showing that he was talking about the debate about whether or not we should have certain statues up, and the debate about that.
Right.
And people feel very strongly on one side or the other. There are still Democrats pushing that false narrative that he called Nazis very fine people. And so it's very frustrating because he could be just saying something that is totally taken out of context. So he probably, I mean, when you're somebody like him, or really any conservative running for office, it's like you just have to think extra hard about how you're wording things, but you're trying to be like sincere and off the cuff while also not getting yourself in trouble by saying something they're going to twist. It's very challenging. So they're going to take anything they can get to twist on him. So.
Yeah, and then he did, I have to be blunt, like, he follows that up though by kind of, in my opinion, giving them the narrative, because he followed that up by saying that, sort of downplaying how many people did behave egregiously. It made it sound like it was a handful of people when I think there's something like 347 or something people who have been charged with very serious things, like injuring police officers. And I remember how angry I was the night of January 6th, because we all need to come down on the side that it's not okay to injure police officers or go in the Capitol and sit on Nancy Pelosi's desk or take her computer or whatever.
Sure.
So, I mean, again, I think we all need to be discerning when we talk about January 6th. And like I said, I don't agree with the media narrative painting everyone who was at the rally as an insurrectionist or whatever. I think there are gradations of behavior and so forth. But I'm not going to minimize what happened to the police officers that day. I thought that part of it was absolutely appalling. And I do think Trump always kind of minimizes that a little bit. He did in the town hall. I didn't really like that. He also said he might pardon a bunch of the people. I don't know. I just don't. Let me just boil it down. I don't think relitigating January 6th helps Trump win the 2024 election. Elections are not decided on the past. Nobody wants to vote for the past. People vote for a better future. They vote for a promise of a better tomorrow. Reagan understood that. Honestly, Obama understood that with his Hope and Change slogan. And Donald Trump 2016, Make America Great Again, he understood that political principle. And so that's what I want to litigate. I want to litigate what's going on now, not what happened, back then.
Well, and I think that part of the challenge is because it has been very conflicting about like when the tapes were released from January 6th that had been held back until the House was won back by Republicans. There was some footage that, and I've already seen plenty of footage where there were some barriers that were opened, letting people in. And, inside we saw some people just wandering around. So I think there's a mixed narrative where there's some truth that there was some people acting violently or doing things that were, illegal, but then they're mixing a lot of people all in together. And so I think, and also the FBI and, unfortunately, I don't trust the leadership of the FBI, who they're going after and how hard they're going after some people. So to me, I'm just like, it's very frustrating when I feel like some people are being unfairly categorized or unfairly, maybe even unfairly charged, because I've looked into some of it and I don't always know what to believe. But I think conservatives are rightfully frustrated with how much they are targeted and like, you know, for showing up at a school board meeting and being called a terrorist. So sometimes that can backfire on us, because then we're so quick to be defensive about things before we get all the facts, right? So sometimes there are legitimate problems.
No. All right.
I agree, but we do have, but we have enough facts to know that there was enough egregious behavior that this just isn't a winning issue for our side. Jim?
Well, we don't need to keep, I mean, the left wants us to keep going back to it because that's what they have. I mean, so we have to be smart about how much we engage about it. I do get that point.
So real quick, I think both, by the way, Michael and Alex, who are watching us via YouTube, we are seeing all of your comments. You're not in. We're broadcasting on about 8 different channels. Mostly it's on Facebook, and we are on YouTube. We do see your comments, and we have a lot more than what you're seeing live. But I am seeing what you're saying. But I think that Michael brought up a very good point, and it proves it right here in this conversation. This is what CNN wants to do. They want us to continue to relitigate January 6th. And look, that's what we're doing. We're talking about it all over again when we have President Biden, who has made his administration's been an absolute disaster. And we're going to see that happen again at midnight tonight. CNN was able to shift the focus from how horrible Biden is doing right now and shift it right back to Trump, bring up again January 6th and relitigate that. So I think we need to move on from that, and we need to start addressing the Biden administration, how poor he's been doing.
Jim, should we play like part of the opening just so people get a flavor?
Yeah. Let's do that. We're gonna play the opening, and we're gonna see how that works, and then we're gonna kind of try to fast forward to some of the time frames on the important issues. But if any of you guys want to talk, just tell me to stop it, and I'll stop it.
As long as your internet gets a little sketchy out there by Holy Hill.
I know that was a concern. Let's give it a second, see if it plays.
It's sketchy on my end.
Okay.
We tried to play it on my computer, and the audio, you can't hear it. I don't know why.
In New Hampshire, a lot of voters with a lot of
Should I stop it, or is it good enough?
2024
Can someone in the comment thread tell us if it's coming in glitchy to you guys?
Shortly, but your polls show that you are dominating the Republican race right now. But you are also
hear it okay on my end, but the picture's glitchy.
Federal investigation for trying to overturn the 2020 election results. Your first term ended with a deadly riot at the Capitol, and you still have not.
Yeah, we can hear it good.
Acknowledged the 2020 election results. Why should Americans put you back in the White House?
Because we did fantastically. We got 12 million more votes than we had in, as you know, in 2016. I actually say we did far better in that election. Got the most.
You can all hear it well, though, right? The video's sluggish, but you can hear it.
I can hear it.
Yeah, I'm going to try to reduce the quality. That might help.
Yeah. We'll fix this for future podcasts. We know there's an issue with Jim's internet. We tried to play it on my screen, but
I think that when you look at that result and when you look at what happened during that election, unless you're a very stupid person, you see what happens. A lot of the people in this audience.
well, we can hear it, so let's listen to it a little bit. I want you to hear her tone.
What happened? That was a rigged election, and it's a shame that we had to go through it. It's very bad for our country. All over the world, they looked at it. And they saw exactly what everyone else saw. You look, even if you just look recently with the 51 intelligence agents, that made a 16-point difference. If you look at the FBI, if you look at the FBI and Twitter, they call it Twitter files, made a big difference. If you look at
Mr. President, back to what you just said there, though, it was not a rigged election. It was not a stolen election. You and your supporters lost more than 60 court cases on the election. It's been nearly 2.5 years. Can you publicly acknowledge that you did lose the 2020 election?
Let me just go on. If you look at True the Vote, they found millions of votes on camera, on government cameras, where they were stuffing ballot boxes. So with all of that, I think it's a shame that what happened. I think it's a very sad thing for our country. I think it's a very sad thing, frankly, for the world, because if you look at what's gone to our country has gone to hell. Our borders are bad. Our military has been bad. You look at the taxes, you look at inflation, what's happened to inflation. It's just destroying our country. we've really become, in many ways, a third world country. And it's very sad what's happened in this administration. And it's something that will turn around on day one. We were energy independent. Now energy is at a level that we've never had to pay before. Nobody can afford to continue to pay what's happening with energy. But we were energy independent. We were getting out of Afghanistan with strength and with dignity.
Well,
and instead we got
yeah.
out. We looked like fools, probably the most.
All right, I'm going to pause that here for a second. What I should have done is try to download the video separately on my computer and play it instead of trying to play it streaming it live. Just was in my son's baseball game.
Well,
tonight.
in the future, we'll fix our video issue. We're working out the kinks in the podcast. But I mean, what I would encourage people to do, and maybe Jim, you could put the link in the comment thread or something. People should watch a little of it because it does get pretty shocking how much, like Jackie Lindley Reindl said in the comment thread, she interrupted a lot. And I agree with that. Like, she interrupted him a lot. And he would be talking, and they would be like fighting for the, the microphone, so to speak. They don't have well, you know what I mean. And then she would editorialize. So he would make a comment, she would interrupt. He would try to kind of keep speaking. She would interrupt again. He would try to take it another direction. She would interrupt and try to say he was lying or factually misrepresenting things or twist it back to January 6th or the election again. And then he would try to talk again, and then she would inevitably close it out with an editorial comment, like a statement, sort of like she had to get the last word after everything he said, and it was always negative toward him. And I couldn't help but thinking they would never treat President Biden this way. Never. Can you imagine if they had President Biden on and they were asking him about Hunter's laptop in that way and obsessing over it and like starting a town hall with it for 10 minutes and constantly redirecting toward it? Like, they just would never do that. And that's where the double standard comes in. It's not that we're saying Trump shouldn't be asked about some of these things or shouldn't be asked tough questions, but it's not done to the Democratic candidates the same way. And that's a problem.
Well, didn't Dan O'Donnell do a piece, I think it was a few days ago, on the silence of the media regarding what the committee came out regarding government corruption or whatever, and they were looking into Biden and what they found out about, the paying for access, the Biden family, basically that whole scheme. And the media has been, I mean, as far as I can tell, been pretty quiet on that, when that would be front page news for days on end if that was Trump. So that's what we're up against, is trying to get people aware of some of the stuff that's going on that they should care about. I mean, we should care if our government's corrupt. Like, we care about kitchen table issues, but also our government. I mean, the people in the different agencies, not the rank and file necessarily, but the leadership is just, it's just really bad. So it's frustrating I wish the media would do their job, because this country would probably be a whole lot better off if they actually told the truth and told the whole truth. And I'm not looking for them to be biased towards Republicans. I'm looking for them to be fair and report the facts. And if there's an opinion, fine, but at least use facts when you're doing it.
Well, they don't go at Biden this way, and that's just a fact. And that's where the bias is most glaring, I think, right? I mean, can you imagine, Jim, if they had Biden up there on a stool, what would happen?
Right. Yeah, that's exactly right. I'm gonna try to key it up to the part where she asked about the economy. Let's see if we can play this.
Given what's expected to happen tomorrow. But I want to talk about the influence you have over your voters. It's very clear that you are very influential over them. You have a lot of impact. I've been to many of your rallies and seen it up close, which raised a lot of questions about the influence that we saw.
This is January 6th.
January 6th, and your supporters when they attacked the Capitol.
Okay.
Do you have any regrets
we can play this
action on January 6th?
Well, January 6th was, again, we go back to it, but January 6th had to do with the fact that hundreds of thousands of people, and you don't see the pictures very often. A lot of the people here probably were there. January 6th, it was the largest crowd I've ever spoken to. That was prior to the walk down to the Capitol building. I don't think, and I've spoken to hundreds of thousands of people. I've never spoken to a crowd as large as this. And that was because they thought the election was rigged. And they were there proud. They were there with love in their heart. That was an unbelievable, and it was a beautiful day.
I think we can stop right there.
I wasn't
So
involved in it very
we
much.
could stop right there, Jim.
Yeah.
So that was to show you what I said earlier about where he said it's a beautiful day. Like, he wasn't talking about the moment where some people were assaulting cops. He
Right.
wasn't.
Right.
And they're misleading people on that, and it's unfair. It's incendiary.
Right.
And Mike Albrecht, yeah. Go ahead, Jim.
Nope. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
You need
I
to
was
talk
just going to confirm your point that, yeah, they're trying to make him sound like January 6th, that he said January 6th was a beautiful day, and he was meaning it started off as a beautiful day, just to reiterate your point. And that's just what CNN and the left media do, how they twisting his words on this issue.
So Jackie made a good point. She said, remember this, Jim? Is this where he pulls out his paper from the pocket? What did you think about that moment?
Yeah, because he had the timeline all written out, right? I let me see if I can find that here.
Yeah, like he whipped out a piece of paper and he had all these quotes that he had, talked about. I remember this from the time he had tweeted, I think, and put out a statement urging people to be peaceful, right? I think he said it in the rally. He said, go to the Capitol and be peaceful or something. I think he put out a statement the day before or something like that where he was urging people to respect officers, respect law and order, respect the Capitol Police.
Yep.
And that's what was on the piece of paper that Jackie's referring to, where he pulled it out of his pocket.
So if you look at on January 5th, the day before, I said, please support our Capitol Police and law enforcement. They are truly on the side of our country. Stay peaceful. Stay peaceful. This was the day before, and this was in the form of Twitter. Now use Truth Social. I think it's far superior. Okay. I hope everybody's on Truth. If you look January 6th, this is before 2:30. I am asking for everyone at the U.S. Capitol to remain peaceful. This is right after, as it was happening. But what happened is they took it down. I don't know why. I think they took it down because it was so good. They didn't like it being up there. I am asking, and we didn't know until I got it back, because now I have 90 million people waiting for me to go back, but I'm on Truth and I'm staying on Truth. Listen, I am asking for everyone at the U.S. Capitol to remain peaceful. No violation. We want no violation. We want no violence. Remember, we are the party of law and order. Respect the law and our great men and women in blue. Thank you. That was at 2:30. That was very early.
Mr. President, I looked at the same timeline that you did.
No, I know, but you didn't report that. You know why? Because it was
we did report it. I was reporting that.
It was taken down, and it wasn't.
But when it was clear to you that they were not being peaceful, you saw them rushing the Capitol, breaking windows. They were hitting officers with flagpoles, tasing them, beating them up. When it was clear they weren't being peaceful, why did you wait 3 hours to tell them to leave the Capitol? They listened to you like no one else. You know that.
They do. I agree with that. But
so
Nancy Pelosi and the mayor are in charge. I assume they were able to do their job. They weren't.
But Pelosi's not in charge of Capitol
And if you remember, I made a video right outside the Oval Office in the Rose Garden. And I'm very proud of that video. I didn't have a script. I don't need scripts like a certain person that's in there right now.
The video, it came out much later.
I mean, enough of January 6th, I think. Yeah. I'm sick of hearing about it. But I do like some of the comments in the comment thread bringing up BLM and Antifa and things like that. And I think Trump didn't he bring it up, Jim? He brought that up as well. There were those riots, and we're not hearing endlessly about them anymore.
I think he talked about pardoning. He was asked who he would pardon, and he said he would pardon most of the people. But I think he alluded to the BLM people and Antifa people. I think he was hinting he would not pardon them.
So Bonnie Held, I don't have a favorite legislator. If you're referring to Robin Vos, we're just absolutely sick and tired and done with the obsession. That's a very small faction on the right. I call them the 2.5%. It's probably less than that. Have with Robin Vos. I think it's completely counterproductive. as with everybody, he's not perfect. But I'm done with it. And I said that in a previous podcast. You can come on with your snarky comments. But that's just the bottom line. It does not benefit conservatives right now to be fixating on the Republican Assembly leader. Frankly, the only guy in a position to hold back the excesses of Tony Evers. You know, it's a waste of energy. It's a waste of time. And as for cleaning the voter rolls up, blah, 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 don't have trust in the elections. Like we said, there are some election issues that need to be cleaned up. And I think Stephanie was right when she said, really what happened is the left exploited the pandemic to expand, how elections were conducted and the ways they could be conducted. They pushed the envelope. If you listen to Sheriff Schmaling down in Racine, the Wisconsin Election Commission, he argues superseded state law. There were issues. What we're simply arguing tonight is that's not the issue to win 2024 with. And it's honestly not a very good get out the vote tactic by Trump. To constantly be saying the election's rigged, it tells people their vote can't possibly count. So why would people get off their sofas to come out and vote in 2024? It's a terrible get out the vote strategy. It just is.
Oh, so just along those lines, so I will get emails from people, sometimes people not in the party, and then sometimes people within the county party that, they have concerns about election integrity. And so what I'll usually do is and sometimes they're really upset. And so I'll just explain like, hey, I understand you care about this issue. I do too. Here's a lot of and I'll list off a bunch of things that we've done to try to fix this issue or fix that issue. And there's been litigation that we've won through the Supreme Court, which, I really hope that some of that sticks, but, regarding drop boxes and regarding curing ballots, because we don't obviously want at my polling place, my city clerk is incredibly, she follows the law, like by the book. So if somebody doesn't have a witness signature, or if there's a small part even like of an address of the witness signature, those ballots will be spoiled unless somebody the voter comes in by the end of the day, or the witness comes in by the end of the day to sign it. But they weren't doing that in other counties. So some ballots were counting in different parts of the state while others weren't. So, we've gone after a lot of that stuff though. We've tried to address a lot of the issues from 2020. So I try to share all those things to try to reassure people and say, hey, we're doing everything we can, and we can't win if you don't. We have to vote. Like in order to win, in order to have a chance to win, you have to vote. And then we can walk and chew gum at the same time. That's what I tell people.
Yeah. And when Jackie just said, Robin Vos isn't doing his job, like I'm going to say it again. Why are we attacking the Republican Assembly leader? Okay, fair criticism is fine, I guess, here or there. We shouldn't have to, applaud everything Republicans do, but I make the case. Like, what has he failed to do? If it's that he didn't decertify the 2020 election, thank goodness. It would have cost probably Ron Johnson his seat if Robin Vos had done that. It would have been a disaster. It was unconstitutional. So I'm just so sick of the narrative, and it needs to stop. There's so much we can talk about. Let's talk about Tony Evers. Let's talk about Joe Biden. Let's talk about Title 42. It's about to expire tonight. Let's talk about inflation. Let's talk about all of that. Let's stop obsessively trashing our own.
Yeah, and I think there's a difference between having disagreements about how we should do things, or just debating about different policies or issues, whatever. And we need to have those discussions. But I think some of the vitriol that comes out is really the part of it that I wish wasn't. I wish that wasn't part of it. Can we have disagreements?
It's an obsession. It's become an obsession, and that's the problem I have with it. Jim, I'm curious. Like when you get your total summation of this Trump town hall, what grade would you give Trump? That's a good question.
I wasn't ready for that.
And what would people in the comments write to him too?
I would, maybe that's a good question for people to ask. To answer. I guess I would say a B.
Interesting. Make your case. I don't disagree with you. But
I thought he did very well in about 90% of the questions. Like I said, there were the few questions I can go over again, but I thought he fumbled the ball on a couple of them. But overall, I thought he did well. What would
Which
you
ones
give?
did you like?
What
Oh
would
yeah,
you
that's
give
such
him?
a good question. Um,
Stephanie, do you have an answer while we're waiting?
I did not see the whole thing. I've seen highlights.
Oh, okay.
So
Right.
I had stuff going on when it was good. So
All
I
right.
missed, but from what I've seen, I mean, I think when he's in this type of setting, I think he actually does pretty well overall. It depends on the setting. I mean, when he's more combative, that's when maybe he can say something that, can be a soundbite against him. But I think he's actually he can come across as very sensible and reasonable when he's having these discussions with, like a back and forth interview. But so I think that's when I go, oh, I like that Trump. I think,
Right.
I think he did mostly well. So.
Jessica,
I
what's
think
your answer?
yeah. One thing I think is like people don't get how funny Trump can be, and he's very hyperbolic, and they just take everything he says literally. And he's a theatrical speaker. He's a showman. We saw that, Jim, when we went to his rallies. Like he's actually really funny.
Yeah.
And I kind of like how he commands the stage as well. And he had some like A+ moments. If he had not gone down the January 6th and election rigging rabbit holes to the degree he did, I would have given him like B+ or an A-, because I thought he was really strong overall. I'm going to say a B- because I really didn't like the election rigging January 6th stuff. Why don't I like it? Because he's playing into their hands. Like
Fair
he's
enough.
giving them the narrative they want.
Fair enough. Ed gives him a C-. It said that talking about 2020 cost him that much. And I have to agree that was kind of his weak point. But again,
that's arguable.
But you had CNN, you had the moderator continue to bring it back too. She purposely did that.
And Sarah Ann said A-. He didn't lose his shit. He went into enemy territory and held his own. That's a really good point. Like he gets like at least half a grade level because he actually went on a CNN town hall and he fielded every single question they wanted to ask him, even the ones where they were hectoring him. And can you imagine Joe? I'll say it again. Imagine Joe Biden doing that. Like they have the guy in bubble wrap in his basement.
I love her. A lefty fembot.
Wow. I mean, it was she had that weird robotic monotone voice when she would constantly like editorialize. But
yeah.
Jim, what would you grade Caitlin Collins?
Lousy. I thought she asked a few good questions, but I thought her bias came through. I thought she was very bullying to Trump. I didn't like how she tried to summarize his points to fit her narrative. I would give her a D, maybe a D-.
I'm going to give her a C- because I'm not going to give her a D or an F because there were times when he didn't answer the questions. And again, as a journalist, it's your obligation to try to pin the official down. And there were times, that he misrepresented things or he was a little loose with the facts, and that's just a fact. But she crossed the line too much. It especially toward the end, it became outright hectoring almost, just hectoring of him. And this bizarre thing where she would wrap it up in a bow or whatever at the end and just inject her opinion statement like she had to get the last word was really obnoxious. Ed Delgado said Collins gets an A for serving her purpose of trying to draw Trump out. I'm also giving her an F for pretending to be a journalist. Yeah, well, maybe that was their goal. They want him talking and talking and talking about the things they want him talking about, which we've already talked about all night, so they could use them against him. And so, Jim, you had pointed out you thought that's what she was doing on abortion on the federal ban.
Right. Yeah, I'm sorry. I was paying attention to something else, but yeah, I think that's what she was trying to do was get him to say that he would be in favor of a federal ban, because we know about 70% of people, of voters right now, I believe, are opposed to any kind of or of an abortion ban. So I think that they were trying to pin him down on that.
Yeah,
What
and
was
she
the
asked it
answer?
like 10 ways. So
I didn't hear how he responded. What was the what was the general response from him about that?
he dodged the question. Like that
Oh,
was
okay.
smart on his part. He should dodge it. Like she was trying to bait him into saying he would put forth a federal ban on abortions, which she knows would hurt him in 2024.
Well,
And he kept just sidestepping it. He kept saying something like, well, I would look at it. I'll take a look at it. And he actually came out for exceptions to abortion before that in this town hall. Like he said he's for exceptions to rape and incest and life of the mother, which I'm not for. Like I'm against abortion in cases of rape and incest, as I've said before. I'm for it if the life of the mother is truly at stake. So I'm not even where Trump's at, but like I recognize that most Americans are for exceptions, and so he came out for that. And I thought like he actually handled the question really well. And then she kept trying to bait him into this corner about a federal abortion ban, but he didn't take a stand on it, and that was smart because I think
what's
they were trying to
interesting-
get an election to flog him with, or an issue to flog him with.
Yeah, what's interesting with that too is that now that the Roe v. Wade was overturned, it's gone back to the states, and it really, I mean, I think that at some level there can be some pro-life legislation where it's more pronounced. I mean, like later in a pregnancy or something. But I think at some point, I mean, it's been kicked back to the states where states are dealing with it. So, so I don't think he has to engage too much in the hypothetical of, at the federal level. But
I want to address this point here that Kyle makes regarding the Second Amendment question. And this came up today, and maybe I got the time on, it's 37 minutes. Maybe I should bring it up first. But it's when Trump talks about bump stocks and the bump stock ban. And just for everyone's information, what a bump stock is, it's something that you outfit a rifle with, and it helps to use the recoil in the gun to fire off rounds faster. It became widely known remember the horrific Las Vegas shooting? He was found, I think he outfitted a lot of his guns with the bump stocks. And I think Kyle, I'm a Second Amendment guy. I got guns in my truck. I've got guns in my bedroom. I've grown up with guns, but I don't think bump stocks are the hill that I'm willing to die on. I think we have to have some regulations. I mean, we for the most part ban completely machine guns and fully automatic rifles. So I disagree with you there. I don't think that it was, I thought it was actually a smart move to ban that. That's my opinion.
He did say, well, actually, I think she misstated what he said. I don't think he really went, but she tried to say at the, so you wouldn't put more regulations on guns. Remember that part, Jim?
Yeah, let me try. I have that timed out here. Let me pull up that here in a second.
I mean, he was very pro Second Amendment in his response. He was hardcore pro Second Amendment in what he said.
Yeah.
I get the bump stock controversy, that's in the past, but in terms of what he would do going forward, like he's very pro gun rights.
Go ahead, keep talking. The moment I lost where I'm at here.
I mean, Ed says give no concession to the left in anything Second Amendment. I don't know. I think it depends on what it is.
Well,
like
I was going to say what I was just debating back and forth, probably pointlessly, but with some people that were on my friends list who are liberal about gun bans and all that. And I said, well, there's thousands of regulations and laws on the books regarding guns. And should we look at, are they all being enforced? And I mean, there's certain things where if you look at the vast majority of the shootings and, murders and all that, the vast majority of them are with handguns and semi-automatic handguns. So I feel like they're always trying to focus on things that aren't really going to solve what the problem they're claiming, and it's always going to be not good enough because they're always going to want to go after more and more and more. I think it's a false argument to say we should like ban AR-15s, for example. So I am very hesitant with what the left wants to do, because I feel like they're always trying to encroach little by little on certain things, and then it's not going to be enough. So they're going to go, like, they want to keep pushing further. It's kind of like with the transgender thing, like, and the LGBTQ, and now it's adding on to it. It's like they started out over here, leave us alone, we just want to live our lives. And now it's like way over here, conform or else we are going to make you pay. Like, so I feel like with every issue they do that.
And let me make a quick point on that. So, you know, let's look at two of the most recent horrific gun violence crimes, you know, in the country. One, the mall shooting right down in Texas. That man was a trained former security guard. Like, he had a security guard's license. He was trained in firearms. He had passed a background check in order to get firearms to be a security guard. There was nothing that would have prevented that man from getting a gun to do what he did in that mall. So whatever you want to go in law you want to create, I mean, he would have passed the background check. And then the second one I would cite is the recent horrific murder of a law enforcement officer in St. Croix County. It turned out that the killer was a felon who had abducted and raped an intoxicated woman, a random woman, that stranger that he found on the streets on a 4th of July celebration day. And so he was legally already barred from possessing that gun. So I don't know what new law or whatever was going to stop that man from getting that gun. He was already legally barred from it. And so a lot of the narratives that pop up when these horrible gun violence tragedies occur, you know, honestly, they're divorced from the reality of what would have stopped the people, if anything.
So I want to, so Kyle rebutted me, and then I want to play what Trump said. But he says that I'm wrong. Bump stock gave the ATF unlimited power to ban whatever they want. You have to remember that the ATF doesn't have the power to write laws, yet they do it all the time. Trump opened the floodgates to that. It's not necessarily about the stocks. It's about giving the three-letter agencies unconstitutional power. All right, let's play this here.
Mr. President, we got another voter here tonight.
And they did that before.
Bobby Petrino.
Nope.
Sarah Ann agrees with you, Jim.
At St. Anselm. He's a member of College Republicans. He's an undeclared voter right now. He supported you in 2020. Bobby, what's your question for President Trump?
Hi, thank you for coming. This is a bit of a pivot, but with gun violence and mass shootings in the news cycle recently, I'm worried that state governments and the federal government are going to act to repress gun rights. Under your administration, you instructed the Department of Justice and the ATF to ban bump stocks. If elected president again, how would you act not only to defend our Second Amendment rights, but to restore rights that have been taken from us, such as, by example, recently the ATF's ruling on the pistol stabilizing braces?
Yeah, as you know, the bump stocks are actually a very unimportant thing. And NRA, I went with them and they said it doesn't mean anything. Or actually, all they do is teach you how to shoot very inaccurately. So we did that. There's been nobody that's protected the Second Amendment, as you know, like I have. I've protected it through thick and thin, not easy to do. But we have a very big mental health problem in this country. And again, it's not the gun that pulls the trigger. It's the person that pulls the trigger. And we have to protect our Second Amendment. We have to protect our Second Amendment.
Mr. President, you dealt with a lot of mass shootings when you were in office. This year, there have already been more than 200 mass shootings in 2023. If you are reelected, are there any new gun restrictions that you would sign into law?
I would do numerous things. For instance, schools, we would harden, very, very much harden. And I'm a very believer. I believe in teachers. I love teachers. I think they're incredible. And they love the children, not quite like the parents, but they love the children in many cases almost as much. Many of these teachers are soldiers, ex-soldiers, ex-policemen. They're people that really understand weapons. And you don't need 5% of the teachers would be more than you could ever have if you're going to hire security guards. But in addition to that, have security guards. You have to harden your entrances. You have to make schools safe. And you can make other places safe. But it is a big mental health problem in this country more than anything else. And remember, We have 700 million guns, 700 million. Many people, if they don't have a gun, they're not going to be very safe. I mean, if they don't have a gun, it gives them security. Now, you need them for entertainment, you need them for hunting, you need them for a lot of different things. But there are people that if they didn't have the privilege of having a gun in some form, many of them would not be alive today. You know, there's a certain country that had a very strict policy on guns, very, very strict.
Which country?
And, Brazil, okay? Brazil, very strict. And the former president of Brazil, and the killing was incredible. They were walking into people's homes and killing people. They had no protection. He said, go out and buy guns. People went out and bought guns, and it went way down. The numbers went way down because they had security. If you look at Chicago, Chicago has the single toughest gun policies in the nation. They are so tough you can't breathe. New York, too, and other places also. All of those places are the worst and most dangerous places. So that's not the answer.
No new restrictions that you would sign.
There you see her trying to summarize what he's trying to say.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I thought, here's a good example. He did really well with that question.
I thought
And a lot of the town hall was like that. Like, he really knocked it out of the park whenever he was talking about like issues that weren't January 6th or the election. I mean, he really did a good job just on the public policy issues.
I feel like he's a lot smarter than. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I thought this is the first time. I don't remember if he's ever talked about arming teachers in the past, but I'm pretty sure it's what he was suggesting by saying 5% of teachers would make up more security guards than we could ever put in. So I think this is the first time I remember him suggesting we arm teachers. I personally like that idea, and I'd like to see something like that happen in Wisconsin.
When people freak out, like, oh, like those are teachers, they're not, equipped to know how to do that or whatever. Well, it wouldn't be by force. It would be if teachers feel comfortable and would be trained to do that and handle that if the situation arose. I mean,
Absolutely.
It would be with training and understanding that, I mean, they would know what they were doing.
It would be voluntary. They would go through regular training. And I want to have secured lock boxes up out of reach that, maybe can only be unlocked by teachers by fingerprint or by combination or something like that. So there's no way guns could be accessed by the kids. I mean, I would be in favor of all that. But I think even in the school where my kids go, I know a few teachers that would take advantage of that. And I mean, what are we doing here? That we're sending these teachers to teach these kids in relatively unsecured schools. Can you imagine being a teacher and seeing your students being shot or hearing gunshots and the only defense that they have is to throw chairs or desks at the shooter? I would like to be able to give our administrators, our principals, and our teachers an ability to fight off any kind of offender.
I mean, at UWM, there was just a guy, and I teach at UWM, right? And there was just a guy that was accused of, having a gun in the library. And they actually apologized for how they handled that because they didn't immediately do an emergency alert to the campus and things like that. But what would you defend yourself with? Right? Like a stapler? I mean, a book? I mean, what would you do? But in Wisconsin, the left is so divorced from reality on this situation that they're actually running around arguing right now there shouldn't even be police officers in schools.
Yeah.
Did you guys catch that? Like, so Robin Voss stuck into the shared revenue plan that was, that Evers is promising to veto this provision of putting cops back in Milwaukee public schools. And the left has been running around, there's articles where people at MPS and so forth are trashing this. Oh my God, it's to be so dangerous to have police officers in schools. I'm like, are you actually kidding me? Like, have you not been paying attention to what happened, for example, in Nashville at that Christian school or in Parkland, Florida, or you name it, Virginia Tech? Like the mindset of a person who thinks the cop is going to cause the violence in the school is just, I can't wrap my head around it. It's so bizarre.
Well, the strange thing is the left has this kind of conundrum where they're anti-police, at least that's what it seems like the majority of them are. And yet they say, I mean, I was just having a discussion with a Democrat today and we're talking about, being able to defend yourself. And if the police can't get there in time, and they're like, well, they said, well, just call the police or whatever. The police are the ones who should be, should help you. And I'm like, but usually by that point, and I'm thankful for when they do show up and they can, get better control of the situation, hopefully. But in the meantime, you're kind of just a sitting duck if you're in a situation where you don't have equal force. If you don't have, I took a concealed carry class, and I was told that, if someone my size, a woman my size, I could be justified in using a gun if a man much larger than me, if I had my life threatened because I didn't have, I'm smaller and it'd be harder for me to fight back, but we should have the opportunity to defend ourselves, and you need to have equal or greater force to stop someone. And I can't figure out why the left doesn't understand that. Somebody was arguing, well, the whole good guy with a gun doesn't stop a bad guy with a gun. They were claiming that that's not true. And I was like, well, how do these shootings ever stop? Whether it's the person using a gun on themselves or somebody finally shows up and takes out the shooter.
Well, we just saw that happen in Texas, in Allen, Texas. A copper, thank God, a copper happened to be nearby when that guy started shooting. A horrific shooting. Thank God that copper was nearby and was able to take him out. I think it was a headshot. Can you imagine if that cop wasn't nearby, how many more people would be dead?
So think about this logic from the left, especially when it comes to schools and cops in schools. They think it's dangerous to have cops in schools. But if there's an active shooter who comes to that school, who are they going to call? The cop to come to the school. So like Jim said, wouldn't you rather the cop be at the school already? Because he makes a good point about Allen, Texas. That police officer who took out that shooter happened to be at the mall on an unrelated call. So he was literally there. And, honestly, if he hadn't been there and there was even a 3-minute response time, that man might have killed 30 more people because he was, armed to the teeth. He was determined to kill. He had already killed 8 people. Oh my goodness. I saw that video and I had to watch it because I was writing a news story about what happened and I just needed to know what was all out there, but I can't erase it out of my head. It was one of the most horrific videos I've ever watched of all these poor people crumpled in a pile, these victims and children. He shot children. He shot 3 members of a family of 4, including a 3-year-old that just went to the mall to celebrate their kid's birthday. It's just so horrific. Why wouldn't you want police officers on the scene of these targets? But Trump made a good point too. We need to harden the targets too. And it costs a lot of money to have like cops at every single possible school. So the idea of arming teachers who want to be armed, get trained, get permitted, whatever, I just don't understand why that's a problem. They're not the danger. I don't get the liberal logic on it. I just don't.
I wonder, like, with the resource, like, so we have school, like, I know in Sturgeon Bay, we have a resource officer, like, on the premises. I don't know if he's there all the time, so I'd have to look into that. But I know he's there for, like, he wants to get to know the students and develop a relationship with them. So, and then they can come to him if they have any concerns about anything, or if there might be a threat, they can confide in him or go to them. So I think, resource officers are at the least, it would be, a good thing to have at school.
They're like beat officers of the past. They're like community police officers in schools. Right. Like they're not just there to slap handcuffs on kids. Right. Like they're there, like you said, to get to know kids, to be a deterrent, to prevent situations from arising. And then God forbid, if there were an active shooter or something else, they're there to act. And like, honestly, MPS calls the MPD all of the time. It's like hundreds and hundreds of times a year, I think. So the idea the police aren't in the schools anyway is just false. Right. So, so Mike Albrecht said, are the accusations of Joe Biden committing fraud just something no one cares about? How is it not constant wall-to-wall news? Well, actually, you know what? I didn't think Trump brought much up about accusations against Biden or his son Hunter. He made an allusion to China and Biden getting money from China at one point. Like, he really didn't talk much about all of that, right? Like, he could have brought up this woman who's accused Biden of sexual assault. I think her name is Tara Reid, which Biden's denied or whatever. Like, he could have flipped the narrative or the script on Biden, but he didn't do that.
Did they go after? Did she go after Trump for the recent the allegations against him that he has to pay $5 million? So did she bring that up, the interviewer?
That was brought up, I believe, at the beginning.
Okay.
She brought it up, yeah. And I thought was really strong on that, to be honest. Now, the media are painting it that he was sort of bullying the sexual assault accuser or whatever. But you know what? I'm gonna be honest. Like, it's America, and he has a right to say, if he says he's innocent, to declare that. And he just declared that. And then he tried to explain. He said, "I've never met her. I don't remember her. I don't even know who this is." And then he went into this description.
Do you want me to hang on? I'm sorry, Jessica. Do you want me just to play it? I think I found it.
Yeah,
you
sure.
Just want to explain it? Okay.
Yeah, it's better in his words.
Okay.
Think that will deter women from voting for you?
No, I don't think so, because I think the whole thing, just so you understand, ready? I never met this woman. I never saw this woman. This woman said, I met her at the front door of Bergdorf Goodman, which I rarely go into other than for a couple of charities. I met her in the front door. She was about 60 years old, and this is like 22, 23 years ago. I met her in the front door of Bergdorf Goodman. I was immediately attracted to her, and she was immediately attracted to me. And we had this great chemistry. We're walking into a crowded department store. We had this great chemistry, and a few minutes later, we end up in a dressing room of Bergdorf Goodman, right near the cash register. And then she found out there are locks on the door. So she said, I found one that was open. She found one. She learned this at trial. She found one that was open. What kind of a woman meets somebody and brings them up, and within minutes, you're playing hanky-panky in a dressing room, okay?
It is a weird story.
John Johnson, I feel sorry for you, John Johnson.
Mr. President, can I
think of it.
I know you're recounting what she said, but Mr. President.
Let me just, if I could, because you asked the question.
This was a
just
jury,
so you understand,
though.
if I was walking in at the because I was very famous then, and I owned the Plaza Hotel right next door, and I owned buildings around it, I'm not going into a dressing room of a crowded department store. Then I say, if she,
John Johnson's her husband, just in case you guys are wondering.
Okay.
she was being raped, and by the way, they said she wasn't raped. Okay, that was her charge. She wasn't.
They found that you sexually abused her.
What? Say what they did. They said he didn't rape her. And
They did
I
not
didn't
say
do
he
anything else either. You know what? Because I have no idea who the hell she is.
But Mr.
I
President,
don't know who this woman
can I
is.
ask you, given your recounting
I
your
don't know
version?
who, and I tell you this.
But Mr.
Are
President,
you ready?
can I
And I
can
swear
ask
on
you
my
because
children, which I'd never do. I have no idea who this woman. This is a fake story, made up story. We had a horrible Clinton appointed judge. He was horrible. He allowed her to put everything in. He allowed us to put nothing in.
Mr. President,
this is a
you're
fake
recounting your version
story.
of events here right now to the audience. You referenced the trial. You did not go to the trial and actually
That's right.
testify. Do you wish that you had
No,
testified?
it wouldn't have made a difference. This was a rigged deal. This was my lawyer said, sir, you don't have to do it. I actually said, I think I should. It would be respectful. They said, sir, don't do it. This is a fake story, and you don't want to give it credibility. That's why I didn't go.
One thing you did do in this.
So, I mean, I think we can stop listening to it, but I mean, he's entitled to say his side on it, and honestly, based on the way he described it, it seems bizarre. It just seems really strange.
Yeah, for this to come up, was it 25 years later, and they went into a dressing room?
And it's how long after he, I mean, like became president in 2016, or, in 2017, he was sworn in. And then, after everything that's come up, it's like, well, just what else could there be that could come out against him that they'll cook up? I mean, it just seems like there's just always one more thing they're trying to create against him. So,
I mean, here's the issue though. So, I mean, Trump's base, like his hardcore voters, they would still vote for him despite this verdict or whatever, because they don't see these attacks as legitimate, because there's been so many of them and the left has cried wolf too much. And it started with Russia. And then when, Robert Miller had this massive cannon that he trotted out, and a little tiny flag came out at the end, and everyone saw that. Everyone said, what the heck was going on here? Because the media, that's all they would talk about. They made him sound like a Manchurian candidate, double agent for Putin or something. It was crazy. So the left has cried wolf a lot. The media has cried wolf a lot. And Trump, keeps getting hit with these things. And next we might see some indictment out of Georgia or whatever. I personally think the Alvin Bragg indictment in Manhattan is extraordinarily flawed in a myriad of ways. And so the base, they're not going to care about this verdict, other than it might harden them into feeling support for Trump, because they feel like he's just constantly being attacked like no one else ever has. But I do wonder how this kind of thing plays with moderate women that Trump has lost. Jim?
I think it's interesting, and I don't know that this is true. Maybe one of you, Mike Albrecht, says that New York specifically changed the law so that this person could charge up these allegations. I don't know. Is that true? I hadn't heard that.
Well, I guess it wouldn't be surprising given what they did with the other case with what's the DA in Manhattan? I'm sorry.
Well, he might be talking about that. He might be talking.
Okay.
I think because the Jean Carroll or whatever her name is case is that was a civil trial that Trump lost.
Okay, so you're saying
I just don't see how Trump gets a fair trial in any blue state in America, whether it's civil court or criminal court. And he did make a very clear statement in this town hall. He said it's election interference is what all of this is. And because the New York charges are based on an extraordinarily novel interpretation of the law, and really it's past the statute of limitations. There's a loophole around that, but it, quite honestly, a lot of people feel doesn't fit the circumstances here. You can toll the statute of limitations if a person fled the state or was out of the state for a consistent period of time. But that's designed for somebody that is a fugitive from justice, like they're trying to dodge justice. Like Trump wasn't in the state of New York because he was in the White House. And number two, he maintained residency there for years when he was in the White House. So he might even have the continuously there argument all the same. And so my point is they're twisting everything to try to get him on this. And I just think people see that. I think people in his base and on the right, they see that. But I do wonder, again, all of this drama, it's just like sort of endless attacks, endless drama. Like, how does that play with, for example, these, mystical, whatever you want to call them, Wow County women we keep talking about that have fled Trump, that they don't like him. They're done with him. How do you get those people back? Does this help?
Yeah.
Does talking about Jean Carroll or whatever her name is on a CNN town hall help? I want him to switch the narrative.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, I wonder if some of the women that just, he's lost some of them, if this would even make a difference. If it would, I don't know if they'd be coming back regardless of any new story that would come out. So I don't know if this specifically would matter one way or the other. But I mean, it's unfortunate. I mean, it is really unfair. A lot of this now, some of, there are some things he said that, can bring drama more than's necessary, but he really just has been such a target for all these years that it's just, I mean, it is kind of amazing that he was able to get as much as he did, get done while he was president, dealing with this constant investigations and attacks. And so I think some people, that's probably why they dig their heels in with him, because they're very this is just really unjust what's happened to him. And so they're very loyal to him that way.
Yeah. Both Jenna and Ed agree with you, Jessica, that Trump can't get a fair trial anywhere in this country. Bear Cub, it's almost 10:30. You need to go to bed.
How old is your
And
daughter?
I did want to counter, or she's 18, his
She's
daughter.
18.
I did want to, yeah, she's 18, Jim. She can stay up late if she wants. Um, I did want to counter one thing that you said, Stephanie. I sort
Yeah.
of agreed at first, and I thought it through where you said like these Wow County women aren't coming back. You're probably right in a lot of cases. But then I was thinking, what do they care about? They do care about their pocketbooks, right? And they
Sure.
care about the security of their families. And so
Sure.
if Trump would just shift the narrative, and I know it's the media trying to put him constantly down these rabbit holes. Like they want this to be the narrative. But if he just wouldn't take that bait anymore and he would literally focus on it's the economy, stupid, focus on groceries and gas prices and the economy and jobs and security.
Sure.
Maybe he could get some of those women back because Trump at his best is actually very likable. Trump at his worst is infuriating. And I want to see him pivot. I want to see him pivot. But Trump never pivots.
How about if do you guys want to see his response in the Dobbs decision? I have that keyed up.
Sure.
Uh-oh. What? I can hear you glitched.
I'm going to play the Dobbs decision when he talks about abortion.
Oh, yeah, that was really strong.
Yeah.
That you would sign if reelected, Mr. President. I want you to meet Julie Miles, a registered nurse from Merrimack. She's a Republican who voted for you in 2020. Julie, what's your question for the president?
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
I appreciate you answering this question this evening. How do you plan to appeal to women voters in New Hampshire who are concerned about the Dobbs decision and how states may change their laws?
It's such a great question, and it was such a great victory, and people are starting to understand it now. You know that they wanted to bring it back to the states, but that was probably the least important part of that victory. Getting rid of Roe v. Wade was an incredible thing for pro-life because it gave pro-life something to negotiate with. Pro-life had absolutely nothing being stuck in Roe v. Wade to negotiate with. And now what's happening, and I see it all over, deals are being made, deals are going to be made. And
sorry about that.
Look, everybody that was president wanted to get rid and tried to get rid of Roe v. Wade.
You mean
for 50
Republicans?
years. Republicans. For 50 years, this has been going on. Actually, a couple of Democrats too. But for 50 years, this has been going on. I was able to do it, and I was very honored to do it. But by doing it, things are happening that are very, very positive. And I happen to believe in the exceptions, the life of the mother, rape, incest, like Ronald Reagan believed in the exceptions. But I happen to believe that. I think it's frankly important to do that. But a lot of people are, against that. A relatively small number. But the way I look, I think it's very important to say this. I consider the other side to be radical because the other side under Roe v. Wade and other things, the other side, they're radical because they will. Remember the debate with Hillary Clinton? I said, rip the baby out of the womb at the end of the 9th month. They will kill the baby in the 9th month. If you look at that crazy governor of Virginia from the former governor, where he said, no, the baby will be born, and then we'll decide essentially whether or not to execute the baby.
But Mr. President, can we talk about what you would do if
these are the radical people. It's not the pro-life people that are radical.
But if you are reelected and you're back in the Oval Office and you get legislation to your desk, would you sign a federal abortion ban into law?
What I'll do is negotiate so that people are happy. But the fact that I was able, I'm so proud of it. We put 3 great justices on the Supreme Court. We have almost 300 federal judges on the Supreme Court.
So just to be clear, Mr. President, you would sign a federal abortion ban into law.
I said this. I want to do what's right. And we're looking, and we want to do what's right for everybody.
But what's right?
But now, for the first time, the people that are pro-life have negotiating capability because you didn't have it before. They could kill the baby in the 9th month or after the baby was born. Now they won't be able to do that.
But I think this is a really important question for you to answer because this is something every Republican, including those who are running against you for the nomination, are being asked about is would you sign a federal abortion ban into law? And
many of them are going to give you the same answer as I am. First of all, I am honored to have done what I did. And a lot of people said in 150 years, he's now the most consequential president because he saved so many lives. And I'm honored to have done it. And because of what I've done, we now have a great negotiating ability. That's what I do in life. I negotiate. We have a great negotiating ability, and I think we're going to be able to
But
get
what do you
something
mean
done.
negotiating ability? Because the question that Republicans have, and some of your allies on Capitol Hill say they want to introduce legislation when it comes to banning abortion. If they send it to your desk, would you sign it?
Some people are at 6 weeks. Some people are at 3 weeks,
Where's
2
President
weeks.
Trump?
President Trump is going to make a determination what he thinks is great for the country and what's fair for the country. But the fact that I was able to terminate Roe v. Wade after 50 years of trying, they worked for 50 years. I've never seen anything like it. They worked, and I was so honored to have done it. We are in a very good negotiating position right now, only because of what I was able to do. And remember this, again, you talk about radicalism. People that will kill a baby in the 9th month or the 8th month or the 7th month or after the baby is born, they're the radicals, not the pro-life.
I just want to give you.
I thought he did well with that overall.
I thought that
I thought it was great.
one
Yeah.
of his, if not the most powerful part of the entire town hall was his response there.
And he flipped the narrative again. He because that's what we need to do. We need to call out the left for how radical they are on this issue, because they want to call us radical. Well, we need to do the same thing and expose them for how radical they are on this issue.
Did you notice how she tried to say, so just to be clear, you
Yep.
would sign a federal ban on abortion? You know,
And he
she
kept trying to
tried
control
tried
the
that.
conversation how he wanted to, which actually I kind of like that actually.
Yeah, and this is what we needed Dan Kelly to do, and maybe even Tim Michaels to do. Like, they had to talk about abortion. Like, they had to say something about it.
Mhm.
And like, I wanted Dan Kelly to say, well, Janet, how late would you go? You know what I mean? And so Trump
We're on
did that
her
well.
heels.
Right.
Yeah.
And instead they just, oh my God, we can't talk about it, which is the problem.
We saw Ron Johnson and how he was successful in negotiating it during the campaign by saying, he believed it should be left up to the voters and that there should be a referendum on it. I'm curious for everyone, why wouldn't it be wise just to say that he's going to leave it up to each individual state and just be done with it to make the issue go away for him?
Well, I mean, it's interesting because the argument is made sometimes that abortion is not specifically mentioned in the Constitution, the issue of abortion, although some would say the right to life, is spelled out in some ways, the Declaration of Independence. But I mean, a lot of people even on our side, some people have argued that it's a states' right issue or a state issue because it's not specifically spelled out in the Bill of Rights or in the other amendments to the Constitution. So, I mean,
and that's what his court did. That's what his court did. And
Right.
so Jim's right. Like he could have just said that and just stuck at that. I don't think he should go down this slope of like federal abortion bans because they're trying to get an issue to flog him with in 2024. A new angle on it, I think.
Oh, go ahead, Jessica. Sorry.
No, it's
Yeah, I was just going to say, as far as like, there has been federal legislation as far as like the Born Alive Act, right? I think there was something like that. And then there's certain, like, I feel like there's a line you cross that should be more obvious. So I just think, I don't know how much you want to delve into that necessarily, but.
Yeah, Robert Kolb makes a good point up here. I just had on here that Dan Kelly was handed gifts to win and he refused to use them, and that includes a gift that Jessica and I gave him that he refused.
Yeah, very frustrating.
Yeah.
Well, I just don't feel like our candidates always get the narrative right. And I can see what the liberal media tries to do, and I can tell always which narrative they want to be the prevailing one. And Jim and I wrestle them for the narrative pretty hard, but they wrestle us back. And it takes the candidates really to have discipline to not follow the media path and switch the narrative to what helps them. And so Trump, he's frustrating in this town hall because in places he did that extraordinarily well. And it certainly wasn't the shit show that excuse my language, that the media tried to say it was. Like, there were parts where he was really, really good. And then there were other parts where he took the bait. Good evening to Brian. We've got our chairman here.
I think it was a shit. I think it was a shit show in terms of from CNN's end and liberal media land. I thought it was an absolute shit show and embarrassment to them.
Right.
I mean, hardcore Trump people are going to think he was an A plus. Like they're going to absolutely love him in this. And I
Yeah.
think people who are on the right were souring on him. Some of them might come back to his camp because of this. Like it was a strong performance in some ways. I don't think it was a performance that's going to win converts from people that have already defected from him, I guess, is where I come down. And he needs to grow his reach, right? He needs to grow his reach. That's part of the issue. So like right, Sarah Ann said she's hardcore MAGA. She gave him an A minus. Like again, I think if you're a Trump backer, you probably loved his performance here. And again, he waded into the belly of the beast and he fielded every single question that they asked him. And that takes some guts.
Yeah, that's a good point. Now, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
he ventured into enemy territory. Again, I'm surprised that CNN had such a pro-Trump crowd that cheered him on. I'm wondering what their thinking was on that. I was shocked they did that.
Okay, Mike. So now you're trashing Brian Schimming, 0-2 in state elections. I don't know what you're referring to. If you're referring to November in the governor's race, Brian Schimming wasn't the chair of the state Republican Party at that time. So get your facts straight. And I'm sick of people beating up Robin Voss, but I'm also not allowing people to unfairly beat up Brian Schimming. This man gets it. He understands what needs to be done. He needs time to do it. He inherited an absolute shit show, if we want to use that word again, in the state GOP. There wasn't even a finance director, I don't believe. There was no fundraising apparatus. Brian Schimming didn't create that. Brian Schimming is trying to fix that. This man goes everywhere. He is working himself to the bone. Give him a chance. Give him time. Knock it off.
And so let me just say, so I actually will be on the state party, the board, because I was elected vice chair in April. And so I will be on the board. And so I'm working with other people and talking to Brian about what we can improve, try and improve data if necessary, which I think there's a lot of different things that could be overhauled. And I think you can't just flip a switch and just change everything overnight. I mean, so I've been trying to tell people the same thing. Just give it some time. We've got time now, from now through 2024 for that election. So we've got time. So we're going to have to get to work. And
we just have this innate ability to just turn on our own. And I guess that's why I've been so vociferous on this. It needs to stop. Like we have so many battles to fight, and you're right, so many things to fix, right? So many things to fix. And it's a waste. It's a waste of energy.
We're also, I mean, I always try to tell people as conservatives, we have a very, it's not an even playing field. It's an unfair fight every time.
Right.
So
right.
Would be nice to be a Democrat, to have the media do your work for you. I mean, it'd be nice not to have to correct all the lies. It'd be nice not to, it'd be nice to have Zuckerberg, fund, offices on behalf of, or, local election offices to try and get out the vote on Republicans' behalf, although I don't support doing that. But I'm just saying we're up against a lot of different things that is just, I don't want to make excuses. It's just, there's a lot that we're dealing with, that it's not always just a simple answer. But certainly we need to work hard and figure out how to win. I get that.
I would like to bring up next would be the Title 42 and the whole immigration issue. And I want to see what your comments are on how he did on this.
No, we should talk about Title 42.
That's what this is about, is Title 42.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Welcome back to CNN's Republican Presidential Town Hall with former President Donald Trump. President Trump, I'd like you to meet Jennifer Simmons. She is a stay-at-home mom and former town selectman from Wyndham. She's a Republican and she voted for you in 2020. Jennifer, what's your question tonight?
Good evening, Mr. President. Title 42 is expected to expire tomorrow. Our southern border and now our northern border are experiencing record migration. We learned on May 2nd that the Biden administration plans on deploying 1,500 troops to the southern border. Do you agree with deploying troops to the border, and how will a Trump administration slow down the rate of migrants coming across all our borders?
Sure. A very fair question, especially since tomorrow is going to be a day of infamy. You're going to have tens of thousands of people pouring into our country, Even the judge, the judge overruled them when they wanted to terminate it early. And he said, that you better extend this thing. The judge in Texas said, I hope you're going to extend this, but this is my policy that they're letting terminate because they lost in court. They wanted to go earlier. You're going to have millions of people pouring into our country right now at a level that nobody's ever seen before. These people are sick. Anybody that wants this to happen to our country, they're destroying our country, and this should not be allowed to happen. How they're not going to do a version of Title 42 or my Title 42, which was tough. If people are sick and have infectious diseases and lots of other problems, we don't want them being into our country. We have enough problems right now. We have problems like we've never had in the history of our country.
But Mr. President,
our country
the
is
reason
being
it's ending,
destroyed.
The reason it's ending is because the health policy, the COVID era pandemic emergency, is coming to an end. That's what Title 42 was. You put it in place because of COVID.
True, but
when it comes to big questions about what your immigration policy would look like if you are reelected, some of your Republican rivals have criticized
Sorry about that.
you for not fulfilling the promises that you made on the campaign trail, like finishing the border wall. So how did voters know that you would get those done if you're reelected?
I did finish the wall. I built a wall. I built hundreds of miles of wall, and I finished it. And then I said, we
Listen to
have to
her
do some
here.
more because there are areas like water going through a dam. There are some areas where a lot of people are coming. You close up one and they come into another. And we started another 100 miles of wall. In fact, I said to my people, if we start this and don't finish it, and then we had a rigged election, I'm sorry to say it.
The election was not rigged, Mr.
Good,
President. You can't keep saying that all night long.
And so then they took over and they decided
Just hectoring
it
him.
would have taken them 3 weeks. I built hundreds of miles of wall. If we didn't have it, it would be hard to believe it could be any worse. They're just letting people flow into our country. Look, a country has to have borders. There's never been anything like is happening to our country right now.
You built about 52 miles of
Ryan's
new wall
on.
when you were in office, Mr. President. It wasn't the complete wall. One other thing that with
No, but I have
immigration,
to
Let's just finish
with
this and we'll bring
immigration,
Brian on.
It was only
Awesome.
Can I
miles of new
respond?
wall.
This is what she does. I built hundreds of miles. Some of the wall was up there, and it would be laying on the ground, rusted, rotten steel, rusted, rotten wood, a little. And what the radical left, crazy Democrats did, if there's a piece of wood laying down, they consider that a wall. I built 30-foot walls that go down 7 feet into the ground. If there was a little piece of wood sitting in the ground, they said, oh, he's not building a wall. We already had a wall. Because this is the game. They're a party of disinformation.
It's not a game, Mr. President. It's about 52 miles of new wall. One other immigration policy you have
I built
when you were
new
in
wall.
office.
I built new wall.
52 miles.
For hundreds of
according to
miles.
CBP, Mr.
What I did is I
President.
replaced other wall that was laying
Oh my
down,
God.
that
So
was
obnoxious.
rotting in the ground for 30 years. Some of it was steel that you couldn't
Mr.
even
President,
see.
it was only about 52 miles of new wall, but
Yeah,
moving
yeah.
on, another immigration policy you had was the zero tolerance immigration policy that separated families at the border. If you are reelected, are you ruling out instituting that?
Well, when you have that policy, people don't come. If the family hears that they're going to be separated, they love their family. They don't come. So I know it sounds harsh, but if you remember they said I was building prisons for children. It turned out that it was Obama that was building
But
the
would you
prisons for the
re-implement
children.
that if you're reelected? Is
Well,
that what you're saying?
we have to save our country, all right? We
So it
can't
sounds
afford,
like that's a yes.
you know. When you say to a family that if you come, we're going to break you up, they don't come. And we can't afford to have any more. Look at New York City. Look what's happening. They're living in Central Park in New York City. The city is being swamped. Los Angeles is being swamped. Iowa is being swamped. Our whole country is being destroyed. Millions of people are coming into our country. And you know what the number is going to be, in my opinion, by the end of the year? Not the 4 million that you hear and the 3 million. I think it's going to be 15 million people. And in these people, they have no idea where they come from. They come from 129 different countries so far. 120,
Mr.
not
President,
just the 4 that we talked
Just to
about.
put a button on that, it sounds like what you're saying is that you're not ruling out re-implementing that immigration policy. I want to get to another voter. Caitlin Boissonneau is a student here at St. Anselm College. She's
I'd like to put a button on her list. Jeez. How rude was that?
Oh my gosh. Let's put Brian. Brian, what's your take on the CNN town hall?
Yeah, good evening, Brian. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Brian.
Broadcasting live from a hotel room in the Milwaukee area. I was doing tonight I was up in Mequon, and Scarlett Johnson was there, who I think is with us tonight, and did kind of a roundtable with probably 30 or 35 Republicans up there about what happened in the election, what we kind of look forward to, and things like that. So it was good. It was a vigorous discussion, that's for sure, but it was good. That never bothers me at all. So it was fine, and it was pretty good. And no, I think the debate was advantage Trump, no doubt about it. And there's very, to the point where all the liberals are going crazy about it. So advantage Trump big time. And she was, the media is not going to let him loose. I mean, what's ironic about this is that we've had two polls now in the last 10 days. First the Gallup poll, and then the ABC News Washington Post poll, which some people are criticizing, but it essentially showed what the Gallup poll showed, and that is the Republicans are competitive or ahead of Joe Biden. So you take a format like this, a roundtable format or a town hall format like that, and I thought he performed really well. I mean, there were some things I wouldn't have said if I were him, but I think he performed pretty well. And, at CNN of all places. So to see AOC and all those people go bananas today was worth the price of admission right there.
Ryan, why do you think CNN did this?
Well, I don't know if it's their new management there or not. It might have been a calculated risk on their part that it's like, look, because the whole the supposed rationale here on CNN making the changes that they've made is to try to balance out some of their coverage. So maybe it was a calculated risk on their part. Look, let's put them on and see what happens. I mean, they certainly probably doubled or tripled their viewership that night just because of that. And they may get some criticism, but I think it comes out okay for them. I mean, it's, the fact that they put Trump on, once and let him talk for the first time in history on CNN, I think is, he's not afraid of those guys.
Yeah, on live TV in front of a Trump-friendly audience. And I was surprised they packed the audience with so many Trump people.
But, everyone, what's the old saying? As long as they spell your name right, and they, CNN's going, or, people are going, the left's going crazy on CNN, but, what are they going to do? Watch MSNBC instead? I mean, what's the damage for them? So I don't, it's like talk radio. Everyone screams about conservative talk radio, but liberal talk radio has failed everywhere it's been. So CNN,
they are. I think the left is worried that if people actually see Trump as opposed to the media's edited version of what he said, that some people are going to say, oh my goodness, I like him. Like he actually makes sense in a lot of issues.
Well, I think I've told the story probably to the three of you in different ways, but the first time I saw Trump live was up in Green Bay when he was at the Resch Center up there. And I was supposed to speak and did speak at the Brown County Lincoln Day on Sunday, but they asked me to go up a day early on Saturday night because Trump was coming to town. I'd not seen him live. I'm like, sure. They asked me if I'd go up and handle media and do things like that. So I go. And the things that struck me about that night were that, first of all, place is packed. It was packed all out in front across from Raynutsky Field there where the facility was and is. And so that was number one. And that wasn't some Chamber of Commerce convention. That was just a lot of working stiffs from 100 miles around who were coming to see Donald Trump. And I had a VIP ticket, which was great, but I didn't really need I wanted a VIP ticket not to get a good seat, but to get in and not have to wait in line forever. So I walked around the crowd for quite a while, outside and inside. And it was not, it was just a lot of average folks just there to see Trump. They were excited about him. He was great on the stage. And a friend of mine, a pretty well-known liberal, was like, she texted me separately, not knowing if I was going, and I said, "Yeah, I am going," and I said, "Well, just watch it." She lives in Madison. I said, "Well, just watch the thing and see what you think, and tell me what you think." And she's like, "Oh, I hate Trump and all this." And I said, "Well, just watch." I said, "I'll be seeing him for the first time too," and so she watches, and like 5 minutes before the end of it, and of course it was, you had all these warm up acts, to Trump. And then he gets out there and riffs for like an hour and a quarter straight without a stitch of notes. And he and she texted me, I don't know, it was 5 or 10 minutes before the end of the rally, and she was watching online from Madison. She says, "Okay," she said, "I still hate him," but she said, "Now I get it. Now I get it." It's just his appeal of talking. Here he's out there in a $3,000 suit, in a building with 12,000 working stiffs in there, and they were eating it up. And I think that's part of his appeal, and it goes to the point you just made. I think they're afraid to allow him to be seen uncensored, or without the filters that a pretty liberal media would otherwise put on him. So, truth of the matter is, I think he does well in those formats. And he likes those formats. He likes those formats. This is not a guy afraid of a crowd. I mean, Joe Biden is a guy afraid of a crowd, maybe not for the same reasons, but, for the people who are complaining about giving Donald Trump where's Joe Biden? Where's the president of the United States? Is he out doing town halls? Is he out taking questions like that from reporters? Is he doing any of that? No, he's not doing any of it. Not only because he's liberal, but because he can't. He can't. He's incapable of it anymore.
Well, he doesn't have much of a record to run. I mean, everything's.
No.
He doesn't have a lot of good things to talk about either. So, I mean, he can lie. I guess he can lie, but.
Well, it's like I was saying to the crowd tonight. I was like, look, I said 37% of the only 37% of the people want Joe Biden to run for re-election. And then I correct myself and say, no, I meant only 37% of Democrats want Joe Biden to run for re-election. And what does that tell you about the shape? I mean, the guy was upside down on almost every poll number, not only in the ABC News Washington Post poll, but also in the Gallup poll from 10 days ago or wherever it was. He was losing to DeSantis on the Marquette poll in January by 7 points in Wisconsin, and DeSantis still has to look at a map to see where Wisconsin is. I mean, the guy's, now he's been here. We were, Jim and Jessica, you were up there, and I don't know what your impressions were, but I think he knocked it out of the park in Wausau the other day. Mm-hmm. I thought that was a very good show. I tell folks whenever I'm on Meg's show, or I was on with Vicky this afternoon, and I kind of say to folks, and I was saying tonight at this event, I was like, number one, unity doesn't mean that we have to agree on everything, a list of 23 things. That's never what unity means. What unity means is that we all basically want to go one direction or the other. We want to go this way, they want to go that way, and we're unified to win. Because you don't get to set the rules, and you don't get to pass legislation unless you win. So you got to win. But I also say, and I said on Meg's show a couple weeks ago, look, if you're for Trump, great. Fly the flag, put up the yard sign, but have a second choice. Don't make it just him or nothing. And if you're for DeSantis or Nikki Haley or any of these other folks, great. Fly the flag, put up the sign, but don't ever say that you won't vote for Trump. If we go forward with that mentality, Joe Biden's going to lose. If we go forward with another mentality of, if it isn't Trump, it's this, or if it's, if it isn't somebody else besides Trump, I'm not going to be there. Well, then we lose the election. And my concern is that we lose America, because I really think that's the point we're at right now.
Brian, did you have an opportunity to watch the entire town hall?
I didn't. Let's see. I had laundry, and then there was that one. Yeah, no, I didn't see the whole thing. I saw a bunch of the clips later, and hopefully representative of what happened there.
Okay.
So
it maybe not fair to ask you, but we all answered. We're just wondering what grade you would give Trump on his performance, but maybe you're not in a position to answer that.
yeah, I haven't seen it yet, and I am going to watch it this weekend though, because I wanted to get a sense of what's going on there. And look, our state convention is coming up here in La Crosse. It's my shameless plug for the evening. Our convention's coming up in La Crosse, and I'm going to invite presidential candidates there, and and if they're able, I think there's a couple of them probably wouldn't be able to make it. And I don't know if DeSantis would consider coming once, but there may be a decision. I mean, I haven't talked publicly about this yet, but that may be a decision point for Trump too, if he decides to skip the Wisconsin debate, which I in some ways can't imagine he will, but in other ways, he may calculate, let these folks scrub it out a little bit and knock each other around a little bit while he is a code holder on that debate, which there's some people that would make that argument, right? So if if all of a sudden I end up with 3 presidential candidates in La Crosse, I don't know what I'm going to do, but we'll figure it out. That's a problem to have.
Yeah, what if Trump shows up, Brian?
I'm fine with it. I don't know where we're going to put him, but
really cool.
Yeah, where were you going to put him?
Yeah, well, so the La Crosse Center, which I've not been in yet, it's been remodeled, which is our hotel, or which is where the convention's going to be, next to the Radisson on the Mississippi River, and that's a big enough facility to handle whatever. And if Donald Trump shows up, bully for him. That's great. We already have former Congresswoman Myra Flores, who is the Hispanic who flipped the seat in Texas for a long held, if not always held, Democrat seat on the border of. She's actually Mexican born. She was born in Mexico, first Mexican born member of Congress in history, and she flipped a seat there and then lost it in November because it was a bad seat, but she flipped it. And she's great. I talked to her on the phone the other day. She's coming in Friday night, and we're going to do a couple of things with her there. And then she'll speak at the convention in the morning. But if I get some presidential candidates, I'm good with it. And, if I get, more than 2 or something like that, as I said to the staff the other day, it's a problem to have. We'll just figure it out.
It'd be awesome.
Make
that happen, Brian. Yeah, make that happen. You never know, actually.
No, you don't.
Never
and
know.
They have reason. Well, and as I also often say on the air, look, Wisconsin is not one of 50 states anymore. We're one of 5. And in fact, I said that to Ronna McDaniel when I was leaving the RNC meeting in Oklahoma City a couple of weeks ago. I told her, I said, one of my standard lines, she was asking me how I was going on the road because she knew I'd been out traveling the state a lot. And I told her I always say that, and she kind of leaned in and said, "No, you're more. It's like you're 101 almost." And so you got the RNC convention here. You got a U.S. Senate race. I think the atmospherics for us here are really good in 24. I think there's a lot of good things that can happen in Wisconsin, but we got a lot of work to do. No doubt. I mean, this is not going to be easy, but I like our crop of candidates. And as I say, if you're for Trump and he doesn't make it through or something else happens, it's not like I don't know what I'm going to do. You're going to have some pretty good choices there. I mean, I'd rather have our stable than to have, what they've got going on. And you look at it in the history since Ronald Reagan or just before Ronald Reagan, a president with these kinds of numbers going into a reelect usually loses. And the history is there on that. So the favorables are upside down. He's upside down on almost every single issue out there. And in fact, we were talking about this in Mequon tonight, and Scarlett can pipe in on this. But we were talking about that. There's a lot of things we have in our favor, and all the issues, all the school issues, all that. I mean, we have a ton of things in our favor. We just have to go out and talk to people where they are at their, And if we do that, I'm optimistic that we can win the thing, and I think we can make the U.S. Senate seat more competitive than it might appear.
That's awesome. So let's talk about Title 42 a little bit.
Yeah.
So Brian, what's your take on that?
Broke news in the last half. I'm sorry to interrupt. Federal judge just ruled in the last half an hour that they cannot allow people to come into the country without giving them a court date. That's a decision by a federal judge in the last 20, 30 minutes. I don't have my laptop here, but you can look it up.
So no catch and release is what he's saying. No catch and release.
I was driving on the way over to the hotel here, and that federal judge ruled last half hour or 45 minutes. I mean, it was very recently. And of course, the importance of that is Title 42 starts tomorrow. And but sounds like the federal judge wasn't having it, or at least and NBC News broke the story yesterday about how they were going to do that. They were just going to be releasing people into the country without a court date or some other arrangement. So I don't know if you found it, Jim, or
because they're woefully unprepared, because Biden had no plan for this, even though everyone knew this was coming, because Title 42 is expiring because, they're lifting the federal health emergency order or whatever because of COVID. And it dates to that issue and pandemic. And yet, so he knew this was coming, that he was going to be lifting that order, and yet there was no coherent plan. And I was reading an article earlier today where a sheriff in Texas was saying that this is happening, where in a neighboring jurisdiction, the other sheriff was releasing people just onto the streets without a court date. And did you hear this, Brian, where they're these illegal immigrants are supposed to be using an app to create an appointment?
Yeah.
When's the last time a government app ever worked?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well, as they grab their Obama phone while they're on their way into the country, they can make sure they have the app.
Right. Yeah. They're Biden phone now, I guess. Biden.
Yeah, I don't know how the story reads there, Jim, but it's Is that what it was?
Yeah, you're right. Hours before it was set to expire, a federal judge is evening blocked the Biden administration from implementing a policy that would allow for the release of migrants without court dates, just hours away from ending the Title 42 public health order. Boy, did he just do the Biden administration. I mean, what a favor he did them. He really saved them on this. It makes me wonder though, there was a story a few days ago about certain migrants from other countries were being given court dates in 2026. So I'm wondering, are they just going to find a way around it just by giving them court dates way out in the future?
Oh, interesting point.
Yeah. So
isn't there already a backlog? I mean, there's already a backlog because there's such an influx of people coming in that they don't have the system can't handle it. So these people get lost in the system because the court date's forever away and then they never show up.
And there's supposed to be 10,000 people a day crossing the border starting tomorrow. 10,000 a day. And then I was reading this app can only hold 1,000 appointments. A lot of people, they can't even get through it on it, or they get an appointment, they sign in and they don't hear back, and it's just a complete disaster.
How does the app work when you're out in the middle of the desert? And I mean, is there internet? Do these people have cell phones if they're crossing over in the deserts? I mean, are these apps even going to work? I mean, I have trouble here with great internet trying to get this thing going. How are these people going to work in their apps? Yeah.
In fairness to you, Jim, you live literally in the shadow of Holy Hill, which is probably blocking the cell tower.
Yeah.
Or internet tower or whatever.
Well, that's good news. I think that's good news for his country. It's good news for the Biden administration.
Well, it makes you
Jim,
wonder.
somebody said, oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, actually, it's 11:03 now, which means it's 12:03 Eastern time. So Title 42 just expired a couple of minutes ago.
Oh, wow.
And
breaking news.
So it's game on already, and it'd be interesting to see if the administration, well, what do they do in reaction to the judge's ruling? Do they appeal it to the local, the federal appellate court and try to go all the way up on it? Or does the Biden administration announce something else here in the next few minutes, or in the next day, that they have to take a little bit of a different approach? Because that's no small matter. That's, to your point, Jessica, that's thousands and thousands and thousands.
Yeah.
Of course. So what are they going to do? Say, oh, your court date is, a year from the date that you crossed in, and oh, by the way, we may change it later. I don't know how they react to that. You would think the Biden administration would have prepared for different eventualities in the courts as a challenge to Title 42. But I don't. This administration is so incompetent that, and or just so liberal that they just, whatever. But they don't. This is the loser issue for them, because the visuals now, even the networks, have a hard time ignoring what a disaster this is going to be, and now and now, of course, this court thing, because it's happening late into the evening here, and I presumably the federal judge had to rule before we got to midnight, which is now past midnight Eastern time in D.C. They had to get in and get this thing done, and so or a judge did. So if they appeal overnight to a federal to an full appellate court and try to go up the flagpole, we'll see here. But that's again, it's a federal judge, to Jim's point, saving the Biden administration from themselves, because now the Biden administration can just say to all their allies, hey, we tried, we tried to get it done. But I just think you've got tens of thousands of people within a couple of miles of the border, and probably many more than that. So tomorrow will be and this whole weekend will be some interesting television, I guess.
Well, remember back to how the media treated Trump with the separation of children. He talked about that in the town hall, the clip that Jim played. And then Biden was elected, and the media sort of forgot about the border, right? Like they just purposely tried to forget about the border until DeSantis started sending people to Martha's Vineyard. Then the media tried to turn him into an ogre, and then they forgot about the border again. Well, they're not going to be able to ignore the border right now. And so you're right, Brian, actually, that this is terrible for Joe Biden. Where's Kamala Harris, by the way? Because wasn't she named the big border czar? Wasn't that her job? Like, where is she?
Yeah, good question.
So we'd like to welcome Scarlett. Scarlett, you might be muted. You may want to unmute. There you go.
Am I unmuted now?
Yeah. So welcome. You were with Brian this evening at a.
Yes, I was. Hey, Brian.
Scarlett. I'm actually Scarlett offered to have me stay over at her and her husband's place, but I'm in the garage. So it's a little cold out here, but
I'll throw you a blanket later. Stop complaining.
Yeah, that's okay. Right? Yeah, wrestle it away from the dog. And,
our dog Gigi.
Yeah.
Scarlett, what was the event you were at tonight?
It was the Republican Party of Ozaukee County meeting, and we basically just had a very short meeting, but then a very long discussion. We invited as many members in the community as possible to come and talk about what their vision was for the future, what issues were important to them, what's a winning strategy, what's a winning message in their mind. And so it was interesting. How'd you like it, Brian?
I did like it. We had 30 or 35 people there, maybe.
Yeah, it was a good crowd.
It was pretty strong opinions sometimes, which is fine. And that was okay, actually. And, but that's kind of, I'm glad we're doing these things now instead of a year from now. I think to the point, which I think some folks are making, I mean, we've got, in some ways we have a little time, and in some ways we have no time to kind of get to where we need to be. But I'm working on rebuilding the finance operation for the party. We had, for Dan Kelly's election, we had 46 field people out there and had just it was 3 times the effort that the party has ever done in an off-year election, that is to say a Supreme Court election or an April election. So we, the grassroots part of that worked, but the other part of it did not work, not from a messaging perspective. And so we heard a lot about that and what we got to do moving forward. So I said to somebody afterwards, I was like, I think the criticism was the criticisms that were there were okay, but I just always got to remind people you can't drive down the street looking in the rearview mirror, and every election provides lessons. And I've been at this a while. I've been doing politics for a while, even at 39. And the 130. I was born in 39, and the truth of the matter is, as I say, Wisconsin's going to be a target state. In my mind, it's the target state. So if people have suggestions about things we ought to do or things we did before we shouldn't do or whatever, that's fine. I'd rather hear it now when we can do something about it than be sitting around a year from now going, yeah, I remember back last year. And, so I'd rather hear it now and use it.
I thought it was really interesting what you said, that we're like the number one state.
It's different to say, Brian, we wish that the party would do X, Y, or Z. And some of the just mindless, I don't know, negativity that gets thrown around. You know what I mean? I just want people to be constructive, and you're 100% right. Like, people should offer suggestions to the party. They should offer suggestions to party leaders and legislative leaders. I'm just done with like the division in the party and like the back and forth sort of obsessive name calling and stuff that goes on. I've always found you to be really open to ideas and feedback,
Yeah, I honestly, I need them, and I think that even as I've been around for a long time, I bring a fresh perspective in terms of. In fact, I was saying to a vendor of ours who I saw in Oklahoma City at the RNC meeting, nice guy, I don't know him, but I met him down there, and I said, your advantages, I've gotten to know a little bit about your product. I said, your disadvantages, I'm not afraid to break it and throw it out the window. So I've got zero, and I really mean that. I mean, I think we do a lot of good things, and I want to keep and enhance the things that we do, but there's things that either I was unhappy with coming in the door, or maybe I'm uncomfortable with now. Because most state chairs and we get elected in December, but you don't have the benefit and maybe not a benefit of having an election to go through right away after you've been elected. Well, we did with the Supreme Court race, and so you got to kind of see it stress tested up front, and so I'm fine with that. And I would, as I say, I'd rather hear it than not hear it. And if I'm going to make changes, I'd rather do it now than try to do it later. And so it's a learning process, but we do have a lot to do. And as I always say, the only thing virtually certain about a circular firing squad is everybody ends up dead. And we've got to kind of move on, learn our lessons. And I honestly believe as long as I've been around, I've learned something in every election cycle. I think it's a mistake for people to go through an election cycle and say, well, that was just whatever. Oh, that happened 10 years ago or something like that. I do think you have to kind of do the after action and figure out what you can do better or shouldn't do at all or enhance and do those things and keep moving. You got to keep moving, and momentum is important for this party going into the presidential election. I will tell you from talking to other state chairs at the RNC meetings, they all kind of have their war stories, and you just got to learn and keep moving. If people have good ideas, I want to hear them, and I'm not getting a lack of advice lately. I'll tell you that.
Well, I think
so. Brian, what would you say are the top 2 things that the party needs to fix or that you're trying to change?
Yeah, I would say, the 800-pound gorilla in the room is fundraising. And that's almost too obvious an answer. But the truth is, the Supreme Court race gave us a lesson in because the Democrat third party groups shoved $10 or $12 million through the state Democratic Party, and Dan made the decision. That is to say, candidate Dan Kelly made the decision not to take hard money from the state party. And that is a decision. And I said to the crowd, Scarlett was there, I said to the crowd that took out two sets of handcuffs, one on Dan and one on me. And the handcuffs on me were that people couldn't send us money at the Republican Party of Wisconsin and then turn it around to send to him. If we'd been able to do that, you would have seen 2 or 3 times the number of television and radio ads that you saw. That's just a plain fact. That's not hyperbole.
Yep.
That's a fact.
And by the way, Brian, if I can just interrupt for a second, and that's unlimited funds, right? People could donate
Correct.
to the Republican Party unlimited, where they have a limit to what they can give
Yeah.
to the Kelly campaign.
Right. The maximum, the individual max to Dan Kelly as a candidate was $20,000. And yet that same person, if they were worth a whole bunch of money, could give me $20 million and I could take the check and turn it around. So that was the tough part of that whole thing, is that we walked into that thing with handcuffs on, and it's just a fact. And everybody, in fact, with politics, others, they've done articles about it. I mentioned tonight, as an example, a simple example, I'd seen a rate card for a radio ad. The reason the party thing, and we have a different status because we're nonprofits, by the law, we're nonprofits. So Democrats and us both. And the truth of the matter is that I had a rate card. Somebody showed me a rate card from a radio station. I think it was up in the Fox Valley or wherever. Whereas the third party groups paid like $94 or $96 an ad. And for that same ad, as a state party nonprofit, I would have paid about 36 or 37 for the exact same ad, same exact timing. And the truth of it is that was a critical mistake on the campaign's part. He had his reasons for doing it. I think they were honorable reasons. He didn't want to be seen as being some kind of tool of the state Republican Party or something, but that is a decision he made early. He committed to it publicly. He did it repeatedly, and the handcuffs got tighter every single time. And so we did. I mean, as I say, we had 46 field people out there. We were helping with media. We paid for, I think it was like 20,000 yard signs. We did, voter ID data, absentee ballot, push, chase, identification. I mean, we did tons and tons of stuff for the campaign on our own dime, and I raised the money to do it. But the plain truth is that set of handcuffs was pretty big and pretty strong. And frankly, and a lot of the third party groups, good people, good advertising they did, all that, but they would have seen a lot more of it had the money been run through me and the state party. And that was the decision the campaign made, and we had to respect it. But we did tons of social media. We did, lots of stuff. I was with them in 21 cities on the final tour. Was doing my own media, things of that nature. But so live and learn on that one. But that was an expensive lesson.
Brian, can I add to that? Just was like, because as a county chairman, I feel like this was the most communication between the state party and the county parties, and all of us kind of working together, bouncing ideas off each other. Where I feel like, I know in the past, there's been a little bit of a disconnect at times, but I feel like there's a really good group at RPW who's willing to, really communicate well with the county parties. And so I feel like there's a good foundation there for, since you've been on, I think there's just been some good things, but then obviously we need to, figure out how we can do better. And, again, part of it is the candidates, but I just think, and I'm really excited for the new board that we do have, as far as like the new people. I think like maybe half of them are new, as far as the new state party board members from each district. I'm just excited for.
There's a lot of new blood there. pretty fair amount of new blood there, and
Yeah.
pretty fair amount of new blood, and which I think is good. It's always good to have the mix of experience and new blood on the board. So I'm excited about that. I think people are fired up. I mean, one of the things that was good, there's been a lot of talk about disunity, but I will tell you, just anecdotally, from when I was on the road, either with Dan or doing my own events or doing local press for him, when I went out and talked to Republican groups after the primary, I didn't hear carping about what happened in the primary. That is to say, the negatives between the two candidates once, and which is amazing because I did dozens of events on the road, and it wasn't griping about how negative it was or about, oh, she may have been better or whatever. When we got done with the primary, it was quite. It struck me actually because I thought I'd hear more because of how negative it was. But people jumped into place, or I thought, my observation was that people jumped into place very quickly. You couldn't keep stuff in stock, Dan's stuff in stock. They were helping them locally wherever they could. And it was really actually quite dramatic that way. And so I thought that was good. And frankly, it showed in the numbers. As I was saying to the group tonight, and I've said to you folks, the highest conservative vote getter in Supreme Court history in this state was Rebecca Bradley. The second highest in the 169-year history of the state, the second highest vote getter for conservatives was Dan Kelly. And that's because we got to center-right voters who generally voted. I mean, our aim was to try to, and we did, expand the pool of people who are called low to mid propensity voters. That is to say, people who would regularly vote, either didn't usually vote or may vote in a presidential election, but doesn't vote in the off year. And we had, I mean, we got 820,000 votes, which was in any other Supreme Court race in history, he'd be getting resworn into the Supreme Court right now, but the damage that happened with independent voters was extremely severe. I mean, we've got 48% of college-educated women. Him losing them by 48 points, that's a problem. You lose them by half that margin, it's a problem. And that's why I'd always say to people, we get into this discussion about messaging or about those types of things. And 200,000 votes isn't because we didn't organize a couple of campuses enough. 200,000 votes isn't one thing. It's either that or it's a really big thing. So I think people need to understand that the outreach that needs to happen for a candidate from statewide office, and I'm getting calls already from potential candidates for Supreme Court in 25. And we're going to relive this, people. This is going to happen again in 25 because what I presume at that point will be Supreme Court Chief Justice and Welsh Bradley is up for re-election. And that, again, will be the majority of the court in that election. So our chance to take it back comes in a couple of years, but there's presumably going to be a lot of damage between now and then.
Brian, I was wondering if you could answer, maybe, Jim, could you put back up Delgado's last question? I thought it was an interesting question.
Yeah, I did too. So go ahead.
Oh, running the ads anyway. Dan's folks, well, first of all, there was a resource issue. I think technically we probably could have, but had we diverted money into those, we would not have been able to do the ID and turnout that we were able to do. It wasn't, I had somebody with some ridiculous suggestion. Oh, why didn't you just call the U lines and have them send another million? Or, why didn't you just do that? And we had a pretty, had somebody turned around and given us 10 or $15 million, I suppose we could have probably tried to do that. But we had a pretty good understanding with the campaign who's going to do what, and they were very insistent that we stay out of the messaging business in broadcast. And but remember too, Dan, and I'm not criticizing him, but Dan, remember in the primary said, one of the reasons I need to win the primary is because all this third party money is going to come pouring in and help me win in the general. He said it publicly, actually. And so I think it was a part of it was a resource issue. But had we not done, again, he lost by 200,000 votes, but had we not done the organizing and all the money that we did for the money I raised for our end of the deal, but it is a matter of money. And I think everyone was led to believe, fairly or not, that there was going to be a lot of third-party money that would come pouring into Wisconsin. And not only did it not come in the amounts, it came too late. So fair question.
Why was that, do you think? Why did it come too late, and why wasn't there more?
Boy, I don't know. When the book is written on this campaign, and I like a lot of the third party groups. I think they did a good job. But I mean, for that, I think one of the other lessons that came out of this is that and it's a general lesson, and unfortunately, Tommy Thompson learned it the hard way. But you can't go down off the air after the primary and have them alone on the air. You just can't do it.
Or you mean Tim Michaels? You mean Tim Michaels learned it the hard way, not Tommy Thompson?
Well, Tommy did too, except
he did the same thing.
He did when he ran against Tammy. In
Senate.
Actually, but that was different. And what happened there, and people maybe don't remember, but this is a long time ago now. But what happened there is my recollection of this is that so Tommy Thompson wins kind of a close primary against Eric Hovde. It was by 17 or 19,000 votes or wherever it was, and. But my recollection of that is that Governor Thompson was like 10 and a half points ahead of Tammy after that primary, because Tommy Thompson, everybody knows who Tommy Thompson is. And so the Senate, my recollection of how that happened was the money from the NRSC, they kind of cut Tommy off and said, you don't need the money right away because you're so far ahead. So they were starving him a little bit because they didn't think they had to put the money in at that point. Well, we saw what happened there, and that, which is a ridiculous tragedy because Tammy's a disaster, but in more than one way. But so you had it there, but to your point on Michaels and others, we have more recent examples. But with Dan, and they had beat up Dan, pretty well before the primary as well. But when you go down off of TV and you're down for 2 or 3 weeks following the primary, and they're up with thousands of points of television, not a surprise what happened there.
Why do you think campaigns I feel like didn't that kind of happen with Michaels where did they just totally spend everything in the primary and not plan for the general if they won? Or did they just think, well, we got to spend it all now in order to win the primary, and then they weren't prepared? I mean, I would just think they should know how important it is to, hit the ground running if you end up winning the primary. I mean, I don't know if you can answer that.
A lot of speculation about what happened there, and I've got some too, but it did not happen. And I don't know if it was, hey, who's going to go first in terms of who's going to put in funding, whether Tim had to do it or third parties who are going to come in and do it. But I mean, that post-primary period is critical. It's not that you have to be up 1-1 with your opponent, but to be completely off and to let them write the story is just a disaster. And I don't know how many times people have to learn that lesson. But that was a very, very expensive lesson to learn. And, and now, I mean, and it gets to my point about candidates running in the future, folks that I'll be talking about that want to run statewide next year or in the Supreme Court race in 25. And I'm basically going to line out 2 or 3 points, fundraising and spending among them, and just say, look, if you're not willing to do what it takes to win, stay out of the race. It's not that you're not wonderful. It's not that, you wouldn't make a good whatever, but these races are bigger, more complicated. They are now enjoying suffering from outside spending quite a bit. And so, unless you're willing to do what it takes to win, do yourself and frankly the electorate a favor and stay out of the race, or support somebody else who's willing to do it. It's what it is. And I like Dan Kelly. He's a brilliant guy. He wrote wonderful opinions on the Supreme Court, but he put limitations on himself and his campaign that the rest of us had to run around, to getting back to Ed's earlier question. And third parties are certainly more a major factor than they were even 10 years ago in this state. Pretty dramatic.
Do you think, as far as along the lines of with campaigns and candidates, do you think there's a possibility that we could get it through to the candidates how important it is not to, it just seems like we're really bad on our side fighting, in a very vicious way against each other in primaries. And I don't know if there's a way to influence that, but I would like to think.
Scarlett and I were talking about that tonight in Ozaukee County. And,
okay.
I always kind of say, as I mentioned earlier, Democrats fight in the bar and Republicans fight out in the parking lot, where everybody can see them. And I think that's been the case. And now we've had recent experience. I mean, the three big elections in the last cycle and a half, or whatever you want to call it, the attorney general's race, the governor's race, and now Dan Kelly's race, there are two common factors there. Number one, they got extremely negative, personal and negative. And number two, there was a lot of outside funds involved. From outside the state coming in and trying to rig the primary. Now, you remember the left put in $2.5 million against Jennifer Doro because they perceived her to be and perhaps they're right, perceived her to be the stronger candidate. And so they took her out. They not only played in the general, they played in the primary. And they didn't have two liberals that had their only real liberal. I mean, Protasiewicz was kind of the chosen one, right? And I hear that from state chairs all over the country about the left coming in because the left always has more money. I mean, Reince Priebus was saying on Jay Weber's show a couple of weeks ago, he's like, look, our people love to give directly to candidates, but they're not as much into giving to causes. Where the left, you show them a snail darter or a landfill site or something like that, and they start writing zeros on the end of that check like crazy. I mean, they do it like nuts. They have the George Soroses and the other folks. It's unbelievable. So I think that's a problem. But as Scarlett and I heard, and all of you have heard, but as we heard tonight. The other thing about the left is that their infrastructure, I think, generally is better than ours. They have unions. They have huge, well-funded left-wing groups that play big in their primaries. And in fact, I think we've talked about this on the show in Milwaukee. Here you had Mandela Barnes as an announced candidate. And then Alex Lasry gets in because all the Democrats are afraid Mandela can't win. And so all of a sudden, Alex Lasry is getting endorsements from Democrat county executives and mayors who he doesn't even know because they were afraid that there was no way Mandela could win. Well, then you get out, 3 weeks or 2 weeks or whatever it is from the Democratic primary, and they all drop out. And I suspect the conversation that was had that will never be reported or admitted is that some of the power brokers called Lasry and called Sarah Godlewski and said, look, we're 2 to 3 weeks out, and this is speculation on my part, but we're 2 to 3 weeks out from this primary. One of two things is going to happen. A, you're going to lose because Mandela's ahead of you because he's got a base in Milwaukee and the numbers show it and you all know it. And so you're just going to lose. Or B, in an attempt to win, you're going to have to spend millions of dollars in the next 2 to 3 weeks cutting his head off on television and everything else, and then you're going to lose anyway. And on top of that, you will have damaged our nominee against Ron Johnson. So those are your choices. And then all of a sudden you see a bunch of people get out of the race.
And Brian, in contrast, I just want to make 2 points on Tony and Michaels. In contrast with Michaels, we all know this, he spent more money to defeat the conservative Rebecca Clayfish than he spent of his own fortune in the general election. Number
Right.
2, Eric Toney, there was like $1 million dumped on his head by a conservative organization in the primary with an exceptionally negative, I believe, direct mail against him. He gets through anyway, squeaks through anyway, in large part, I think, because of his base in the Valley. And then the money doesn't come in for him in the general. Like where was the money in the general? Like he got wildly outspent by Josh Call. He still came fairly close. I think the top of the ticket, Michaels dragged him down. But it's really frustrating that the money didn't come through for him, because I've long felt that Josh Call, of course, he's going to run for governor someday. We needed to take him out now, not give him a chance to run for governor next time. The money didn't come in. We cannot win if we keep getting wildly outspent. And then you mentioned Dan Kelly made some really bad decisions about money, right? And like what he was willing to take and do. So I think we've got to fix that. We can't win if we keep getting outspent.
Well, I would just tell you, as I mentioned, I think I mentioned before, it's a national issue. In one of our sessions at the RNC meeting, you had almost every state chair telling the story that the Democrats and the left, particularly, have created a national money mill for these states. And you may see it, and think about this. If I make it worse for you here at 11:35, if I give you nightmares for the night, and that is, if let's just say Protasiewicz, she will be sworn in the Supreme Court in the first week of August. Let's say they throw out the congressional and legislative maps. Well, even if they do changes just a little on both of those maps, and some of them may be substantially, you could have what amounts to a reapportionment, the second act, 2 years after we voted on the districts under the new maps for the last census. You may have a new set of maps both congressionally and legislatively, which may drive up the spending even more. So I mean, there's that's why I say this cycle is going to be one heck of a ride, because you're going to have Wisconsin with a presidential race, a U.S. Senate race, maybe new sets of maps, congressional maps, as well as legislative maps. So I talked to a third party group who's a smaller group but does some third party work. I don't think they did it in the Senate race, but I just said, look, there's a set of things that you have to be cognizant of going forward here, and others with a lot bigger titles than I've got, tried to get into the Senate race tried to get into the Supreme Court race and advise folks to think about whether it was going to be helpful to have two candidates rather than one. And nobody obviously was interested in backing out, and I'm not blaming them for that, but it's the truth. And so, I mean, there was such a set of circumstances with the Supreme Court race. It's almost mind-numbing, and but we're going to pay the price for it now.
Brian, can you get Dick Uihlein and Diane Hendricks in a room and say, I know you're both billionaires, but can you start just agreeing on a candidate? Because that's part of the problem, and all due respect to them, they pick different candidates in primaries sometimes. Look at the governor's race. And if they united their forces.
Time.
Was it every time? Yeah. Imagine if they united their war chests.
Yeah. I don't know. They're both great folks, and they do tons of great things. But they have some different perspectives on things. And but I will tell you, and I'm going to be doing some regional roundtables around the state with folks who've been helpful as contributors, and kind of laying out the ground rules. And in fact, in response to one of the questions tonight, or half a response to one of the questions tonight, I said, they're like, geez, why weren't you able to get in there and separate these two or get one of them out? And I said, look, we just came, whatever it was, 6 or 8 months after our last state convention, where a lot of our people didn't even want to endorse a candidate, much less, go in there with, the knuckles and the elbows out. So it's like, which is it here? I mean, what do you want here? Do you want us involved or don't you? If you're trying to endorse a candidate, all of a sudden you're a bunch of establishment toadies from Madison. And then if you stay out and there's a fight, they're like, you got to get in and stop this thing. Well, okay, all right. Thanks for the advice.
Quick one.
Appreciate it. I'll let you know. But the truth is, I think your larger point is a good one, and that is we're going to be in a lot better shape if folks who step up, especially in the third party world, get behind someone and everyone's kind of pushing in the same direction. And who knows, maybe we'll see that play out in the U.S. Senate race. I do think there's talk about potential U.S. Senate candidates. That is to say, in this next cycle against Tammy, I think they're staying in touch with each other.
Brian, can you coordinate, so you can't, during campaigns, you can't coordinate with third party groups, but
Correct.
When it's not a campaign, then you can interact with them? Or is that all the time?
No, basically that's true. I mean, once the campaign is on and they show an intent or actually do go out and expend resources against a candidate, then nobody's talking to each other.
Right. Okay. But beforehand, you can discuss certain things. Okay.
And part of my the lengthy to-do list just on this topic, instead of 10 other topics, but the lengthy to-do list is to go to different organizations in the state and going, okay, we saw we saw the movie in 2022. We saw the sequel in April. Has everyone got the storyline now? Everyone got this down? If you haven't, you can, go onto Netflix and see it again. But we cannot go through these things and not learn lessons and expect to win. And as I always say, 11 out of 22 times since the start of the century, we've had statewide races in Wisconsin that were decided by less than 30,000 votes. And, we're going to end up on the bottom end of that thing if we keep shooting it out in primaries.
So, Lori O'Brien Wolf in the comment thread asked, why should the wealthy donors choose the candidate? You make a really good point. I wasn't trying to say they should. I guess what I was just trying to say is I want them to agree on who they are going to back. So we don't have a situation where one is spending millions to brutalize the other in a primary. If they're going to come in a big way, it would be really great if they were united in doing that, because the money would go further for one person. And Brian, I was wondering, who do you think is considering running for as a Republican against Baldwin? I'm curious.
Well, the NRSC, which is the National Republican Senatorial Committee, which is essentially the campaign arm of the Senate Republicans out in D.C., they have a lot of interest in Mike Gallagher. They've probably got more interest in Mike than Mike has in them right now, because Mike's having some fun in the House and doing a great job on the committee and in China and things like that. But he hasn't said no. He said basically it's unlikely, and I'm not looking that way. But at least that I've. Stephanie, you live up there. You might have seen it, but I
don't hear much from. I've tried to, they play it close to the vest. So it's hard to. I mean, I talk with his staff all the time, but so I know when there was rumblings of stuff, I was getting two different stories from people in the know about if he was going to run for Senate, and then nothing happened with that yet. But
I think Mike. I don't think he's probably ruled it out, but I don't think he's sitting up at night right now going, should I do it?
No, I don't sense. I think he's super focused on what he's doing right now in the House. So
yeah. But so Mike's one of them. I would say Eric Hovde is definitely one of them. I know he's been talking to a lot of folks There are some people believe that he will get more public as we get closer to our convention up in La Crosse. There's the businessman out of Waukesha who's got the limited term employment agency, who's got 15 or 20 million to throw into it if he decides to run. It's conceivable. I shouldn't even say this, but it's so now I will. It's conceivable. Think about it this way: if the congressional map was radically changed, let's put it that way, if the congressional map was radically changed, and that is to say, they drew a horrific map for Brian Style, for example, and wrote his district clear into downtown Milwaukee or something, maybe he would have an up or out moment. And I don't think I will say that's not the first time that's been suggested. And do I think that happens? Not necessarily, but it's certainly possible that could happen because we don't know what will come out of that map thing. So there's been talk about Tom Tiffany. I saw Tom the other night in Wausau, as did you, Jessica and Jim. And I don't know that that's the first thing on Tom's to-do list to run for Senate, but I do know that that's something that his people. He bought the domain names. What was it, Tiffany for Wisconsin or whatever that was, bought them, and it set off a national media furor. All of a sudden, I'm getting calls from all these national media people, and I'm calling Tom going, what'd you do now? And, so I don't, so I think you have a Tiffany, I would say probably the first rung right now, and meaning first rung in terms of, do we want them? Do we not want them? That's not what it is. But the first round of people who are thinking about it are probably Hovde and the business guy from Brookfield or from Waukesha. And I don't know about any electeds right now. But these things, it's not early, because if I was thinking about running, I'd be nailing a lot of things into place. But I sometimes things pop out of nowhere. And
the advantage Tiffany would have. Oh, sorry. The advantage Tiffany would have is he's from that area of the state, right? In part.
That who would have?
Over there. Well, never mind. It was a dumb comment. I've heard rumors Tiffany might want to run for governor next instead of Senate, though.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. I think he's going to be running for governor. I don't think he's going to run for Senate. Yeah.
I never heard that.
Yeah, I think you told me that, Jim.
Yeah, I did.
I stole Jim.
I heard that.
You know what? I heard that rumor too. In fact, I heard it about 9 seconds ago. And
yeah, you heard it.
I've heard of
it. Yeah. Tomorrow morning, I'll be calling national reporters going, you should have heard what I heard on a late night call last night. Which is how some of that gets going.
Brian, Sarah Ann wants to know if the Trump camp has contacted you yet.
Good question.
They have, and I'll deny having said it. No, I know some of the Trump folks out of Ohio. In fact, I saw them at the RNC meeting, and I stay in touch with those folks. As I think state party chairs want to have lines in all the major campaigns. And as you know, I was on the Trump recount team, and so I know some of those folks pretty well. And I have not talked to him since this whole issue about whether he'd participate in the first debate or not, but that turned into a national story in a hurry about the potential of Donald Trump skipping, the first debate or one of the first debates. Let's put it that way. But that's a big deal for us in Milwaukee, which is where I'm close to tonight. That's a huge deal, that debate that will be in August, this August. And if anyone's looking for tickets, I don't have them yet. Because I'm getting.
Yeah, we want a ticket, Brian.
Yeah, we want to go.
Anybody out there who's watching who wants tickets, I don't have them. but small denominations are easier to count than large ones. So
So Lori O'Brien Wolf said Eric Hovde would be in it to win it, balls to the wall. Yeah, if he gets in it, like I'm gonna be really honest, no disrespect to him, but I'm sick and tired of him flirting with running for things. Because we hear his name every time there's a statewide race, and then like he never gets in. So either stop flirting with things or just get in the thing. And then, like she said, get in it to win it.
yeah,
I'm
and
sick
I
of these
think
dances that go on forever and ever, you know.
yeah, I think if Eric decides to run, and I haven't heard him say that yet. I've had conversations with him where I hung up the phone going, yeah, I think he's probably going to do it. But to Lori's point, he's got the resources to do it right. And the time he did run in 2012 against Tommy Thompson in the primary, he certainly spent the resources and came relatively close. And but you'll also be against a very well-funded Tammy Baldwin as well, because she's got a national fundraising base. The great thing, I love hearing this from national reporters about, oh gosh, they just assume that Tammy's, practically the opponent, the incumbent, they can't be defeated. And my answer to that is always, well, when's the last time you heard from U.S. Senator Russ Feingold? Because Russ was supposedly the guy that couldn't be beat, and worked with John McCain on McCain-Feingold and all this other kind of stuff. And all of a sudden, a guy who, makes plastics up in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, who showed up at Tea Party rallies, put him out of business, and not only did it once, but did it again six years later. So I honestly don't think that Tammy is nearly as strong as people think she is.
Well, and she could be
So
tied
Sarah
easily to
Ann,
Biden.
oh sorry.
Oh no, it's okay.
Sarah Ann I wanted to thank Sarah Ann for her kind comment, but I actually think we should run Scarlett against Tammy.
I'd love to see Scarlett run against Tammy.
Where did Scarlett go? There she is.
No,
there
Scarlett,
she is.
did you hear that?
Yes, I did. I'm eating Ruffles chips.
I think she was taking it. I think she fell asleep. She looked like she was asleep to me.
She woke up when I said she should run against Tammy Baldwin, though.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I would love that contrast.
I was going to ask, is there a woman in the conversation? Like, can we find a woman?
Can you imagine the contrast of Scarlett versus Tammy Baldwin?
You could sell tickets.
I think
for that one.
Yeah,
I think we're starting something here. Scarlett, do it. Run, Scarlett, run. I'm actually not kidding.
I'll be your campaign.
It popped in my head when Sarah said that, but then I'm like, oh my God, like that could actually be an amazing contrast.
Sarah Ann, she would work day or night. Yes.
like I'm sick of the same old kind of candidates. Like, let's run someone from the absolute.
It would be a different kind of.
It would be like a conservative mom coming out of the parent movement. Oh my God, that could be really powerful.
Be a great contrast. Yeah, it'd be a terrific contrast. And you know what? The truth of the matter is, Tammy has always been overrated. She's always been overrated.
Does she do anything ever?
Spend federal money.
Yeah, well, let's just say with all
screw on Fort McCoy.
With all possible respect to my acquaintance, Tammy Baldwin, she never got accused of sneaking up on anybody in Washington. And I think, it was to have her out there canceling out Ron Johnson's vote is so ridiculous. You can't even, talk about a contrast. Holy smokes. And, but I do think she can be beat. And I think too many people are talking themselves. Maybe I'm being Pollyannish about it here, but I think too many people are talking themselves into believing that Tammy can't be beat. And to whoever made that comment as we went through the transition there, if I were Tammy Baldwin with her record, I would not want to be on the ticket with Joe Biden in Wisconsin this year.
And this
That's
is where
a good point.
conservative media comes into play, like how important it is to build conservative media, because really,
Yes.
honestly, the media just give Tammy Baldwin so much cover. But you're right, they tried to do the same thing for Russ Feingold. Like both Tammy Baldwin and Russ Feingold, they're extreme liberals. They're out of step with the values of like most Wisconsinites, in my opinion. They're not moderates, but they get painted that way by the liberal media. They give her enormous cover. When is the last time you ever saw a negative story about Tammy Baldwin other than the Fort McCoy scandal, right? And so
Yeah.
we need to start stripping away that veneer, that Teflon,
Yes.
you know, whatever shield that the media are giving her, because when you strip that away, she's an extreme liberal who is completely out of touch with Wisconsin.
And
Start
she
defining
has,
her now. Start defining her now.
Yeah.
well,
It's
so what
don't
happened?
wait till it's too late.
Well, and there's
True.
been a couple
Good
of
point.
times, I don't recall the votes, but there's been a couple of times in the last couple of months where she split off the administration on votes, which she's usually lockstep for the White House, if not to the left of the White House. So I think she's overrated. She's certainly overrated as a candidate. But I mean, you have a good contrast there against Tammy Baldwin. And I think you can turn it into a 45 or 46% race in a hurry. And it is kind of a what has she done for us lately, because she doesn't really do a lot. And I just think that she would have to run away from Joe Biden in this state, because the truth of the matter is the president's been a disaster for Wisconsin. Absolute disaster for working people in this state.
Can you see that or no? How do I do this?
What is that?
Oh no, it doesn't work.
What was that?
Can't read
You
it.
read it? You can't
Run,
read it?
Scarlet,
Can't read it.
run. The run,
Run,
Scarlet,
Scarlet,
run.
Yeah, I'm for that. I'd love to see that. I'd love
I'm
that.
telling you, it would be a perfect contrast.
Scarlett, I'm still in the Milwaukee area. We could have breakfast tomorrow morning and just chat about anything, really.
There you go. There you go.
Gosh, exciting, new, hardworking, grassroots, mom, conservative, freaking awesome.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd love it.
You'd have to get
Do
in
you
early.
guys think
You'd have to
that
get
Joe
money.
Biden's really going to run? Do you think he's really going to be the candidate?
I do, but then I think if he wins, he'll step down, immediately.
Sure.
They're just scared Kamala will run if he doesn't. That's what I think. They don't know what to do about her.
I still think Gavin Newsom
and
is going to run.
I think that raises an important point, and that is that, with Joe, it's kind of like he's the best spare tire they have. I mean, 4 years ago, remember, Bernie was going to go into the Democratic convention at some point with a plurality above Joe Biden. So all of a sudden they fall in love. Bloomberg writes a $500 million checks and gets like 3 delegates out of it. So then it's back to Biden to stop Bernie. Because remember, Biden's candidacy got reinflated because he was the one who could beat Bernie. So the party, you talk about backroom cigar, back.
We still don't know who won the Iowa caucuses for the Democrats.
Right, exactly. I mean,
They cheated Bernie out of that.
So Biden ends up the candidate because, or 4 years ago, Biden ends up the candidate because he was the only person that was going to be able to stop Bernie. Well, now you've got Biden again. And again, it's in more than one poll. You've had only in the mid 30s to high 30% of Democrats who want Joe Biden to run again.
Yep.
The problem for the Democrats is the bench is not long. And you've got a vice president who ordinarily, you could argue, either party would be the one to step up. Well, Kamala Harris is a disaster. I mean, she's half his age and she's still deteriorated more than he is.
Oh, Brian, she's an eloquent speaker.
Yeah, she is.
She mesmerizes.
I'm going to skip watching skip watching the tape of the debate this weekend and watch her instead. So I mean, it's a very odd circumstance here that you have an incumbent sitting president and vice president who are rejected by their own party and will still end up their nominees.
Yeah.
I'm
I mean,
actually
think about
surprised that
historically.
I'm surprised we're not seeing Newsom get in, you know?
I think
Oh,
Newsom
boy.
is still, I still think that there's a chance. I mean, and then you
What
don't
about,
talk, no one talks about, Robert Kennedy
Robert
Jr.
Kennedy, I was just
I
going to bring
mean,
him up. Yeah.
I mean,
Oh yeah, yeah.
he would be their best choice. He would peel off Republicans. I mean, they're so kind of dumb to ignore him. I think he would be their best chance because, he's even friends with Senator Johnson, and
Yeah.
he has a message about vaccines, and he's very much against the deep state. So he could peel off moderate Republicans and a certain conservatives, and then still he's a Kennedy, and he's a great
Well,
speaker.
yeah, he's a
I'm
very
really
good
enjoying
speaker.
his candidacy. I'm enjoying immensely his candidacy because it's really refreshing to see someone on the left, like
Yeah.
running on the left, but mixing it up like that and challenging the orthodoxies of thought on the left in some really key areas. And he's pretty fearless about what he's saying. And I really like some of his messaging as well about censorship. He's opposing censorship and just things like that, the power of some of these alphabet agencies in the federal government. And I
He'd
agree
win
with you,
college
Scarlett.
kids in
Yeah,
a big way. He'd win college kids in a big
Yeah.
way.
yeah,
But Democrats don't want
yeah.
him because he's authentic, and he's a bigger threat. Honestly, I think for Democrats, he's a bigger threat than Trump is.
Well,
Oh, they're terrified of him.
they're terrified of him, and the truth of the matter is this: you can have Gavin Newsom, or you can have some of these other people standing around, checking Joe Biden's pulse, 10 times a day, but the truth of it is that from where they sit right now, Biden's probably the only one who can beat Trump or DeSantis to
I
the
don't think he
extent
can
they
beat
could on
DeSantis.
either. And I'm not saying either of them would. All I'm saying is Biden is still their best hand. So think about that historically.
That's
Joe
scary.
Biden, who has dragged the country through everything that he has, and was not the candidate they really wanted 4 years ago, but he was the spare tire that they had to use because they had to get the car going down the road. And it's essentially that case now. I mean, when you have those kind of numbers saying we don't want the president of our own party to run for re-election, but I guess it's got to be him. Who else would it be? Boy, that's not a strong hand to go into an election.
I
You
don't
know,
think Biden could beat DeSantis. I don't think Biden could beat DeSantis. I don't think that bears out in the polls as well. And I think if they dug
Right.
in deeper, that's why I think that they're willing to have Trump on CNN, because they think that he would be, maybe they're gambling that Trump would be the candidate that's easier for Joe Biden to beat. I don't know. I think that if DeSantis were to win the nomination, you might suddenly find that Joe Biden gets Epsteined or something, and suddenly Gavin Newsom is the candidate. I don't know. I think stranger things could happen. I don't
Well,
know. It feels very weird. It just seems weird. Biden is the worst. I don't even know. It will be weekend at Bernie's. They will literally have to put glasses on him and have somebody like propping up his arms up and down as he's like moving his head like side to side. Like
I'm not so sure they're not doing that already.
Yeah.
I know.
That's
He's
what they say about me. That's what they say about me as state party chair. So I'm feeling like I'm getting in good company now. But I mean, it shows the dilemma, though. I mean, think about that. That they have a president that, I mean, let's be honest about it, is certainly cognitively impaired, but they have no choice. There is kind of a weekend at Bernie's part of this.
Yeah.
But they have no choice. I don't think Gavin Newsom using California as a base is a winning thing. I mean, I just don't think it is. Now, the truth is, and part of the gamble here always is you don't know until you know. I mean, you don't know how Trump will really do against Biden until it's Trump versus Biden. You don't know how DeSantis, who's appealing in a lot of ways, will do until it's DeSantis against Biden. So you're making the bet all the time, right? On who's going to be strong and weak, and you do the best job you can. You look at the polls and do all that sort of thing. But I'll tell you, if the Democrats didn't get woken up by these last two polls, the Gallup poll 10 days ago, and now, I mean, and of course the Dems are going nuts, shooting at the ABC poll right now. But it only really confirmed, for the most part, what happened in the Gallup poll, and that which is a disaster. It is a disaster for the Democrats. I mean, they were heralding today the number showing this morning, showing that inflation is all the way down to 4.9%. Wow, we finally broke 5%. Inflation's down to 4.9. I mean, I stopped at Quick Trip on the way over to the hotel here. People were dancing in the aisles. They were so excited.
Well, then there's Tucker Carlson, there's Elon Musk, there is a new game in town, and supposedly Elon Musk. Megyn Kelly, and Elon Musk is trying to develop something to take people away from YouTube, which probably won't be very hard considering how YouTube is censoring, as long as they could get the numbers and get the monetization. So, Elon Musk could have a very, fully thriving free speech apparatus before this election, which would make, I think, college students in play, younger people in play. It would open up. I mean, it would destroy the ability for the mainstream media to control all the messaging. And if there's a way that we could actually just get out the information about Biden that we couldn't, that would be awesome.
Am I reading Ed's thing right?
If it gets into hour 3, Jim gets into ultra.
Yeah, come midnight, I sit back and I just listen.
Well, I'm already drinking wine, so.
Yeah.
Actually, our common thread is unraveling by the minute too. Put on Sarah.
Hey, I got a question for you, Brian, before I forget. Do we have anyone?
Jim said they're going, yeah, smoke them if you got them.
Yeah, right.
Oh, look at Sarah Ann's comment.
Well, I want to ask Brian. Brian, do we have anyone to run for Dan Knodl's seat yet?
Oh, good question.
Lori, our friend Lori Wolf might be. I know there's at least one candidate who I do not know.
From Grafton. A candidate. I don't.
Scarlett would know. That's your.
Yeah, we have a candidate from Grafton. He's a solid conservative. I don't know of him well, but I know that he's a really good guy. So there is somebody. I know that Grassroots North Shore is ready to run their person.
Okay.
Yep, they've already got the guy that Dan beat last time.
Hey Jim, I think Sarah Ann doesn't think you know what Sybaris is.
I know what Sybaris
is.
Sybaris.
Yeah.
Sarah Ann wants to know, Brian, if you're at the Sybaris. She thinks you are.
Oh, you're at the Sybaris. If you live in Mequon, you know why I'm laughing.
Oh, okay. All right. Now, unfortunately,
I have no idea what that is.
Sybaris has heart-shaped beds and slides into little pools in the.
Yeah, no,
there's a nickname for it. Syphilis.
Brian, are you going to slide into a pool after the show?
Oh boy.
See that sliding down the pool.
Past midnight.
I think we're getting punched out.
Unfortunately.
Of course, Jim knows what Sybaris is. He was a cop.
Yeah, I know.
Well, I guess it wasn't your community, but
it's a classy joint, right, Jim? It's a classy joint.
Yeah, no, I've heard stories about the Sybaris.
Well,
they rent their rooms by the hour.
Yeah. Brian, yeah,
it's going downhill fast.
Yeah,
I know how you're gonna follow that one, Jim. How you gonna follow that one?
No, we're at 3 hours here, so
yeah.
It's just getting good. Come on, it's just getting fun. I don't want to stop now.
Now I like Sarah, but if I wanted to shoot back, I could say I looked out the window and I thought that was your car in the parking lot.
Oh,
that's how she knows you're there. Yeah.
Yeah.
She has her swimsuit.
Sarah's a good girl, so I'm not going to say nasty things like that.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what Sybaris was, so anyway,
yeah.
You did or you didn't?
LOL, you know me.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Ooh, I think we found a match.
Well, now that Title 42 is gone and the world's coming to an end, I mean, we're all kind of waiting around
Oh
here
my
on here.
God, I know. What?
Well,
We should go-
didn't Ron DeSantis just do something, some legal action in which he's able to stop some of what the Biden administration is doing with
And he
the
signed a
quick release?
bill. He signed a bill on a legislative bill on, for example, he's not allowing Florida to accept driver's licenses to illegal immigrants that were issued in other states. That was one thing. And another piece of it was requiring hospitals to report if they have illegal immigrants, coming in their doors, for infectious disease purposes and public health reasons and all of that. Not saying like all legal immigrants are bringing public health issues across, but like obviously a subset are. And I think, that this is giving DeSantis a chance to lead, right? Because of
it
the
is.
state, right? And to draw a really stark contrast and strong contrast with the ineptitude of Joe Biden. It's a good issue for him.
It is. I'm just so scared. I'm watching those videos that are getting posted by the Fox News correspondent. He does such a good job using all the drone footage. It's an invasion. It's an invasion. I mean, I don't know how you could look at what's happening and see it as anything other than that. It's
up to 13,000 a day are now going to rush over. By the way, Scar, I don't know if you heard the news, but a few hours ago, a federal judge did strike it down, saying that Biden had to give court dates. And so it's essentially reversing the decision for now, at least.
Yeah.
good.
I'm thinking this podcast is fun when like random people come on like this. This is fun.
Yeah, it is.
Well, you're not random people, but
Not totally random.
Yeah, random.
exactly.
You just
I'm the only random one here.
you're not
Speak for
totally
yourself.
random. But like we didn't expect all this like
yeah, when we just
interesting
go to
pictures.
Sybaris, we pull people out of their suites and say,
Well,
it's funny.
considering the last time I was on this podcast, I was doing it from the parking lot of a Quick Trip in Lake Mills, Wisconsin.
Yeah.
You know,
But that
There's
worked
a
well.
quick trip across from Sybaris, according to Sarah.
Yeah.
Oh goodness! See, every Thursday night.
Every Thursday night.
You're at Sybaris.
We did at midnight. Yeah.
Start rumors.
StreamYard open mic night, and
Oh, that'd be more entertaining, probably.
I'm impressed. We still have
Scratch the internet.
I'm surprised we still have a lot of viewers on it after midnight.
do we? I can't see here.
Well, we have about 15 or 16 that I see, but I think we probably have a lot more than
There's
that.
podcasts that
just one
have like
page,
drinking and everything. They do this like after hours. Everyone drinks.
Yeah,
Let's do that. I want to do that. That'd be fun.
yeah, we should
Let's
do
do
that.
let's do Wisconsin right now after hours, like once a month
Yeah.
or something. And yeah, where you can drink.
Yep, I'm drinking now.
That'd be
but-
hysterical.
Yeah.
We
We have to
couldn't
have-
tell Scarlett at all.
I have a hot chocolate from the lobby when I checked.
Sybaris.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I was like, oh, I didn't know you served hot
I'm just
chocolate here.
kidding.
My drunken advice. Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, we are doing that now, Sarah. Okay.
My drunken advice.
That would
Well,
be fun.
You should do one from convention. Come up to convention and do one from there.
Oh, we
'cause-
will.
Yeah, that'll be
For
fun.
Jim
sure.
and Jessica,
Yeah.
are you going to be
Yeah,
at the
let's-
convention? Jim and
Yeah,
Jessica?
let's do that.
Yes, we
Yeah,
need
we
to do
should.
one at the
Oh, yeah.
convention because Brian, tell them one of the speakers, which is awesome.
I mentioned before that we'll have former Congresswoman Mayra Flores there, and first Mexican-born member of Congress, and was a Republican, and she's fantastic. I talked to her on the phone the other day for 15 or 20 minutes, and she's getting her from McAllen, Texas, to La Crosse is not an easy set of flights. But she's coming, and we're excited about that. And she'll be around for a couple things we're doing Friday night, and then we'll speak at the full convention the next day. And we're going to have good workshops from the stage, as well as Friday afternoon we'll be having our usual set of grassroots workshops. But actually, some changes. We're doing some things, and then I'll be announcing in the next week or two a set of workshops that we're going to do around the state to follow up on what we did in January and what we do online and what we do at convention. We're going to hit the road again, as I did in January. We're going to hit the road again. Leslie Hubert is great, who's our grassroots director, and we'll be on the road to at least 3 to 4 cities in the next couple months to teach grassroots activists and also folks who are in county party leadership and are new or just want a refresher course. So we're gonna, and that was my commitment when I started, is that we're gonna stay on the road to the extent that we could. And we don't, the state party right now does not have that big a staff. We actually have a fairly limited staff, and we generally do have a limited staff after we get through an election cycle. And of course, we went out of the frying pan and into the fire between November and April. So the staff is pretty lean, but it's important for us to be out there and seeing people face to face. So we'll do a lot more of that, and then follow up with a lot of online training as well. So there'll be some good things coming.
That'll be fun. It'll be a fun
Yeah, it
weekend,
will
that's
be.
for sure.
Yeah, and La Crosse is such a great town, and it's a good convention
Fun
town. You can park at the hotel there and basically not move your car for 2 days because
Yeah.
you can kind of walk everywhere in La Crosse. And so I'm looking. I've been to La Crosse like 3 times in the last month and planned it that way.
And guys,
I mean,
guess what? Meg Ellefson is going to be there too, because we were going to
She
hang out
will.
on Friday.
Good.
Yeah,
I love Meg Ellefson.
yeah.
Yeah,
She wanted
she's
to
great.
have some, like, have a girls' night on Friday. So
That'd be fun.
yeah.
With just a girls' night? What fun
Jim,
is
you're
that?
not invited.
Yeah.
Jim, you
I'll hang
can't
out with
take
Brian.
along.
Brian and I
Oh,
will hang
yeah.
out.
Oh, that'd be
yeah,
fun. That'd be
Jim and I
quite
will
a
find something.
dangerous
Jim and I will
team.
have something to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
Dangerous duo there.
Yeah, we have a bunch of guys who usually do a cigar hour somewhere during the. We've done it everywhere from a balcony of a hotel to a parking ramp to whatever, where we sneak off with bourbon and cigars. So Jim will be part of that group this year.
All right.
Ooh,
Looking
that's
forward to
fun.
it.
Yeah.
Very good.
Might be entertaining to see Jim drunk.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't
that'd
think
be
you've never seen me drunk, have you?
No, it'd be interesting,
Yeah.
especially on a podcast.
Yeah. All right.
Might be funny to see Brian drunk too.
Okay, where's this going?
Yeah.
Who can get the drunkest lacrosse? And then I literally said to the staff today,
We know her.
we're going to have a couple of good-sized hospitality rooms on Friday night.
Ooh,
But
that's
we
fun.
were scheduled to
That'd
have
be
a couple
fun.
Saturday night too, but some of them are moving around. But I was in favor of going to Buzzard Billy's, which is about a block from the convention hotel, and they have great jambalaya there.
Ooh,
It's
that
kind of a
sounds good.
student bar, but they
Mm.
get a lot of folks as a regular restaurant too. It just looks like a big oversized bar, and they have great jambalaya there. But La Crosse it's fabulous. If the weather's, you got the river right there. You got Grandad's
Mhm.
Bluff, which is fantastic. And so I'm a big La Crosse fan. We'll have a nice.
It's a beautiful area of the state.
Oh, it's so beautiful.
The fun downtown. I think this
Yeah.
will be a great regrouping convention,
Yeah.
and it's probably good. There's not an ongoing campaign right now, right, Brian? Like
That would
there's
be nice.
nobody knifing anyone else. So it's an opportunity, right, for everybody to just get back on the same page.
I think so.
And like you said, like people don't have to agree on every issue. They don't even have to
Nope.
agree on every candidate. We just need to try to change the tone, I think, of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just, as I say, you always want to go through these elections and learn what you can learn out of them and take the lessons and kind of, and do it, but then keep moving forward. And as I say, I mean, we just can't keep looking backward and expect to make progress. So learn the lessons and keep moving.
Brian, Ed Delgado says every time someone says Robin Voss, you have to take a shot.
For the convention?
At the
I don't
convention.
know.
Oh, you'll be drunk for sure.
Yeah, you'll be smashed
Right.
in an hour.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, God, yeah.
That
Yeah, I think
started just a tiny bit today, but it didn't go too far.
It
Yeah,
started
a
on the
little bit.
podcast,
Yeah.
but I shut it down fast. It started.
Yeah.
Someone came on the thread and blah blah blah. Robin Voss.
It gets going. Well, it's I've always said I wouldn't necessarily want to be in leadership in either house, the legislature. And when we came in, when I was state prosecutor's chief of staff, we had not had an assembly majority in 24 years. We only had one member in our new majority who'd ever been in the assembly, Cloyd Porter from Burlington. And so literally it was like, and that was the year we did Miller Park. We did, I think, reorganization of the DNR or something, and a bunch of other things. And so it's, but you never want to have a 51 vote majority. You take it if that's all you got, but you always want to have a few more. But you have too few or too many, and it usually causes the same problems, and for political reasons. But I don't. Presumably, I hope we have majorities all the way from through Tony Evers' term, because frankly, had we, as much as I can think of things that I would have done differently had I been in the legislature and leadership, the truth of the matter is the majorities in both houses are stopping the very worst impulses of this governor and the Democrats in this state. And I have been around. I hate to put it this way, but I'm old enough to have known Democrat majorities in both houses with Democrat governors, and it's not pleasant.
Yikes. And they're more
Thank
radical
God
than
for
they've ever been.
Yeah, thank God for the Republicans in the legislature right now.
Yeah,
it's it is extremely unpleasant, and frankly, we're going to get a taste of it with the new Supreme Court.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think we've been in Fat City here for about 15 years with friendly courts, and that is about to end. And the from a historical perspective and a policy perspective, what's going to happen with this new court is going to be staggering in its impact.
It's going to be a disaster, absolute disaster.
A disaster that will not be, even if we took the court back in April 25, that does not mean they just turn around and reverse everything right away, because it might be hard to do. So people should not underestimate the challenges ahead.
And Walsh Bradley. Yeah, Ann Walsh Bradley is going to be tough because she's an incumbent who's been there forever.
Well, and I've kind of voiced my theory on Ann Bradley, and that is I'm not convinced she's running. And the reason I say that, I think she might well run, but I think two things happened here. Number one, she announced early to keep any major conservative, saying, hey, I'm going to run. So if you run against me, but Ann's never had a race like the ones we've seen in the last several years. She's never had that race, ever. So that's number one. Number two, Ann Walsh Bradley will be think about it this way. Ann Walsh Bradley will be the incumbent, the tie-breaking vote on a lot of really bad stuff the next 2 years. Really bad stuff. Yeah. And so she'll have a record to run against where if she's out reversing Act 10 or school choice or whatever, that's going to be on her.
That's a great point.
So
the Democrats always overplay their hand, Brian. And then the pendulum swings back. People need to remember that.
Exactly. Now, the reason I think she might not run, and this is just the Brian Schimming theory of the moment, but is that let's just say she runs and gets reelected. And again, she's up in 25. And Ann, I believe now is into her early 70s. She's got kids and grandkids, and when people are at that age, she's doesn't want to stay forever. Very seldom in history have Supreme Court justices run for that second or third term, or let me put it this way, their final term, and served out the whole 10 years. Oftentimes they resign the position. Well, think about that. Let's just say she's reelected in 25. She'd be sworn in again in August of 25. Let's say Tony Evers loses, doesn't run for reelection, and a Republican is elected governor. Well, a Republican A governor can solely, without consent of the Senate, they by their signature can appoint whoever they want to the Supreme Court. So let's say a Republican takes over for Tony Evers. Well, all of a sudden, she can't resign for 4 more years because a Republican governor would replace her. And we just saw this play out in Washington on the U.S. Supreme Court a couple of years ago, where they waited too long. Well, does Ann Walsh Bradley, instead of wanting to have the option and maybe resigning within 2, 3, 4 years, all of a sudden she has to wait 5.5 or 6 or 8 because there's a Republican governor in place. And if she hasn't been, and Ann's smart enough, but if she hasn't been smart enough to go, well, okay, I could, maybe should run for re-election, but I might be hanging around for a lot longer than I'd plan on it.
So I see your theory, though. You think she announced because she wants to deter like a very formidable Republican from jumping in, because if it's an open seat, there would be more temptation. And then at the last minute, she'll switch, and they probably have some other liberal lined up that they know they want to run or something.
Oh yeah, they'll have a lot of folks. Because the truth of the matter is, whether it's Ann or anyone else, the plain fact of this is, and we just saw it play out, they're going to have all the money they need. And so there will be a battle royale again in 25 for control of the court.
Yeah. Wow.
So,
a lot coming down the pike.
I tried that my Ann theory out on a former justice a couple of weeks ago, and he said, you're right. And he said they don't usually serve out their last term, because 10 years is a long time. And when you're into your 70s, even if you're in good health, if you're into your 70s and run for a 10-year term, that's a long time to be missing the grandkids, baseball games or, vacationing or doing anything else that you want to do, in your active, years. So I just have to believe, and again, we've seen it happen. I mean, that's how Dan Kelly got on the court. Is Dave Prosser resigned, and Dan Kelly got on the court.
Jim, do you know what a squishmallow is?
I do. I had to look it up.
We have many of them.
What's a squishmallow?
It's a very soft stuffed animal. It's super soft. It's like a pillow, but it's really, really, really soft.
One.
Yeah.
Oh, Annie has a squishmallow. Yeah, I didn't know what it was called.
I didn't know what it was either.
Give Jim a squishmallow. Maybe Summer, your kid, maybe Jenna has
They have real big ones too.
I don't. I don't need a squishmallow.
Did somebody comment on that? Or?
Jim, didn't fall asleep on the podcast. Get him a pineapple squishmallow. But doesn't that mean like marijuana or something?
Pineapple?
Wasn't there a movie like that?
Let me see that again.
That's not what pineapple. That's not what pineapple means, Jessica. Upside down pineapple. Yeah.
No, I'm thinking of that movie, The Pineapple Express.
Oh, okay.
It was about running drugs. Never mind. Never mind.
Very distressing.
It's getting kind of.
Yeah.
Never mind.
We have my daughters. We have so many squishmallows.
Jessica's getting.
Ed started it.
Yeah.
Ed started it.
Yeah. There you go. That's your fault, Ed. Yeah.
That was not intended.
I think
I'm getting Jim a squishmallow for Christmas.
Yeah. All right.
With the WRN account, just so he can bring it on the podcast. That would be pretty funny. It can be the mascot.
All right. Well, Sarah's gonna say it. A pineapple outside your house means you're a swinger.
Oh.
Really? I didn't know that one.
Yeah.
How do you know, Sarah?
Yeah.
Isn't that what they do down at the villages? I read a news story about this where they hang loofahs on their golf carts and drive around, the old people down in Florida, to show if they're whatever they are, like what whatever they are.
I don't know.
I read that in the news.
Can you speak to that?
Google it. Google loofah the villages. You'll see.
Oh goodness.
All right.
There's probably pineapple loofahs.
All right. We are losing viewership quickly here.
Jim,
We're
needs
hosting our
direction.
own. It's like 12:30 and we're like static, you know. We're like
Yeah.
everyone wants to know what we're gonna say next.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Brian's
that's
like,
what
how
I
did I
know.
get roped into this? Oh my god.
Right.
See, Sarah knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, those retirement homes, I guess Squishmallows and Viagra.
Oh my god.
What?
They do, it's a lot, like what's that?
Oh, really?
Those old age homes, like there's a lot of, actually like.
It's a lot of hanky panky.
Yeah, there's a lot of hanky panky and a lot of Viagra.
There's very few men left and a lot of women running around.
I know one of my friends had to clean out her grandfather's like place, and she said she found so many bottles of Viagra, it was like shocking.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. The ratio's like 10-1 down there. The guys have it like 10.
Yeah, his funeral was attended by only women.
Oh my God.
Jim, Google loofahs in the villages and put it on the screen.
No, I'm not Googling anything else.
Dude, it's funny.
I think we're done with that.
Yeah.
Funny.
All right.
Jim,
just-
you
yeah.
cut it off sooner.
All right.
We probably should go to bed before we all say
Yeah, I
something.
do.
We're gonna regret.
We have to get Brian to bed, and I think I gotta get to bed here.
I'm gonna
I gotta
take
go
my
to bed.
painkillers and go to bed.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh.
How you doing, Brian? How's your back?
Yesterday was the worst day I've had so far, so I'm hoping I went and it'll work done on it today. And I skipped a trip to DC because I was planning on going out to DC Sunday, and I canceled the trip. And although I was going to be back for the Right to Life event on Tuesday, and so I was there without having the DC part, but it's going a little bit slow. So
All right.
but thanks for asking. I'll get there.
Brian, that's because, like I've said multiple times, you're absolutely working yourself to the bone for this cause. And I, for one, greatly appreciate the work that you're doing. And I believe in you. And I know that you know what needs to be done. And I believe that you are such an incredibly hardworking person and you will do it. So thank you for everything that you do.
Amen. I agree.
Amen to
Yes,
that.
thank you.
I appreciate that, and we just got to all do what it takes to get there in the next year and a half, and we do that, and we're gonna have a heck of a party.
Very good.
I just want to make sure you hear that, because you can, I'm sure you run around, you talk to a million people, but I want to make sure you know that so many people do believe that and believe in you.
Well, I appreciate that, and I hope that going forward, as we've all often said, you just gotta focus on the right things. So we get people to focus on the right things and stay unified, and we win. And if we don't, we won't. So to me, it's like an easy choice. And so hopefully we'll get there. I know we can. So that's good.
And that's why people who want DeSantis, if Trump wins this primary, have to vote for Trump. And if people who want Trump, and vice versa, you know what I mean? Like, people can pick their chosen one, but then we can't have never Trumpers or never DeSantis people at the end of the road, or Nikki Haley or Pence, but I don't think they have a chance.
Yeah, it's there's no choice. I mean, as I've kind of ended my talks in the last couple of weeks, I think in this cycle, America's at stake, and Biden gets another 4 years, and frankly, another several dozen federal judges. We're going to have a different country, and we just, to me, it's like not even a choice. I don't even think about it as being a choice that we can, and so that's what keeps you going.
Yeah.
Very good. All right.
We'll keep fighting the fight.
Good night, all. Thanks, Brian, for
Good night,
joining us.
everybody.
Really appreciate
All right,
it.
it was great.
Good night.
Good
Bye.
night,
Night,
all.
everyone.
Good night.
Night.